Han Li was only at the early deity transformation stage, and he had been feigning weakness this entire time, so his words naturally came as quite a surprise to everyone. Even the perpetually expressionless purple-robed man turned to Han Li with a hint of surprise on his face. A cold light flashed through the eyes of the man with the sharp eyebrows. "You're a brave one. It's been several hundred years since I've met someone who dared to talk to me like this despite having an inferior cultivation base. In that case, we won't have to hold back in the battle for the spirit land in 3 days," the man said in a menacing voice. "I'll be sure to take everything you throw at me when the time comes. I'll be taking my leave now." In response, Han Li gave a nonchalant reply before extended a slight bow toward the purple-robed man and departing from the second floor. The man with the sharp brows looked on at Han Li's departing figure with a dark expression. Not long after that, the fatso and the man with sharp brows appeared in the air high above the heavenly Jade pavilion, and the two of them were discussing something through voice transmission. "Brother Xian, what use do you have for that spirit land that you're fighting for? You couldn't disclose this information in there, but you can tell me now, right?" the fatso asked with a benevolent smile. "I spoke the truth earlier. It is indeed to cultivate a type of secret technique that necessitates a switch of cave abodes. Otherwise, why would I go out of my way to find someplace with such sparse spiritual chi?" the man with sharp brows replied with a faint sigh. The fatso chuckled with a disbelieving expression. The man with sharp brows was quite resigned to see this, and he put on an expression that said, "I can't do anything if you don't believe me. So be it. Regardless of what objective you have, there must be some circumstances involved that make you unwilling to disclose your goals. Are you really planning not to hold back in the battle against that Han brat?" the fatso suddenly changed the subject. "Why do you ask? Could it be that you have some ties with him, fellow Taoist Jin?" The man with sharp brows was rather displeased to hear this question. "How could I share any ties with him? I just wanted to tell you that he's a cultivator who's only recently ascended to Deep Heaven City," the fatso cautioned. "A recently ascended cultivator. So what? A new cultivator will ascend to our Deep Heaven City once every 2 or 3 years. Do you think I'll lose to an early deity transformation cultivator, Brother Jin? I was wondering why this man dared to be so arrogant. He must have dominated whatever lower realm he came from, and he's taken that cocky demeanor all the way here to the spirit realm." The man with sharp brows gave a cold chuckle in response. "Haha, this man's cultivation base is naturally not noteworthy at all. With your powers, even I wouldn't dare to say that I can defeat you. No matter how powerful an early deity transformation cultivator is, there's no way that he'd be a match for you. However, the ascended cultivators in the city always like to look after one another, so just teach him a lesson and don't actually kill him. Otherwise, even with Senior Ming as a backer, things could become quite troublesome for you if those guys become aware that you killed one of them," the fatso cautioned in a meaningful and heartfelt manner. "This man has been far too arrogant, so I'll naturally be teaching him a good lesson. As for whether I'll actually be taking his life, we'll see when the battle comes." A cold light flashed through the man's eyes. "All right, in that case, I have nothing else to say. In 3 days, I also have to go and fight those 4 guys. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to win my own battle." A concerned look appeared on the fatso's face. "You're being far too modest if you say that, Brother Jin. I heard that Brother Jin recently obtained a primordial treasure that possesses incredible abilities, and it's no less powerful than a spirit treasure." A peculiar smile appeared on the man's face. The fatso's expression changed upon hearing this before he quickly recomposed himself. "I didn't think that you'd heard about that already, Brother Wang. Indeed, I did obtain a rather powerful treasure recently, but to say that it's as powerful as a spirit treasure is a bold exaggeration. It simply has some protective properties." The fatso waved his hands in response. "Oh really?" A hint of a smile appeared on the man's face. After that, the two of them conversed for a while longer, each of them harboring their own ulterior motives, before the fatso departed as a streak of red light. The man with the Wang surname looked on with a dark expression and harumphed coldly. "HMPH, he's trying to anger me and make me strike up a vendetta against those ascended cultivators. What a devious plan. That man knows a lot about you and is already beginning to suspect you, so you should be more careful from now on. He's not anything to worry about, but his grandfather is someone whom even I'd rather not face." Another man's voice suddenly sounded above him. Spiritual light then flashed there, and a green jade-like worm that was around a foot in length appeared. The man immediately extended a respectful bow toward the green worm as he said, Don't worry, Master. As soon as I obtain the spirit land, I'll completely seal it off immediately. Unless that fatso knows anything concrete, he won't be able to do anything. I trust that you'll do a good job. This is quite an important matter, and if it weren't for the fact that I'm at a critical juncture in refining my spirit treasure, I definitely wouldn't just be deploying an avatar here. I hope you won't disappoint me. The worm nodded in response. I'll be sure not to disappoint you, Master. The man vowed before a hesitant look appeared on his face. But Master, are we sure that the information we have is accurate? The spiritual chi there really is quite sparse. It doesn't appear possible that that man would have passed away there. Of course, we're not completely sure, but with that person's identity, we have to give it a try even if there's only the slightest sliver of a chance. If it's true, then we'll be able to obtain that person's treasures and cultivation arts. In that case, not only would I not have to worry about my upcoming tribulation transcendence, it's quite possible that you'll be able to reach the spatial tempering stage as well. Hence, defeat is not an option for you in 3 days. If the opponent does indeed prove to be quite troublesome, then there's no need for you to hold back. Just kill him on the spot. The aftermath may be a little troublesome, but it's nothing compared to that person's treasures and cultivation arts. The worm's voice suddenly cooled significantly. The man's heart jolted upon hearing this, but he immediately replied, I understand, Master. All ascended cultivators have different tricks up their sleeves, so make sure you don't get complacent. Even though this man is only at the early deity transformation stage, I'll lend you my 1,000-soul bell just in case. You'll have 3 days to refine it, and that should be enough for you to temporarily use the treasure. With that treasure, your victory will be assured. The worm opened its mouth after a brief period of contemplation, following which a ball of yin qi was expelled from within its body. A black bell that was around an inch in size was enshrouded within the yin qi, and there were countless runes visible on the surface of the bell. The man was ecstatic to hear this, and he hurriedly extended words of gratitude toward the worm. He then rustled his sleeve, and a burst of blue light shot forth to accept the bell. After that, the worm gave him a few more instructions before disappearing up his other sleeve. Only then did the man turn around and fly toward another direction as a streak of blue light. Han Li was naturally oblivious toward these exchanges, and nor could he have imagined that someone really did intend to kill him. After departing from the heavenly Jade Pavilion, he didn't immediately return to the Flying Spirit Palace. Instead, he flew for over half a day according to the annotations on the map, finally settling in the air before looking down at the city in the distance with his brows furrowed in contemplation. Come to think of it, it was more accurate to call this place the state of Tian Yuan rather than Deep Heaven City. The area governed by this city was comparable to a small state in the human world. However, the Deep Heaven City wasn't actually all that vast in a strict sense. It was only several tens of thousands of square kilometers in area and had been sealed off by massive city gates. The city itself was trapezoid in shape with city gates on the front and rear, while the thick mist from massive immortal formations obscured the remaining 2 sides. Even true spirit-level beings wouldn't be able to barge their way through the mist. The wall that facing the primordial world was the narrowest one at less than 100 kilometers in length. Yet the watchtowers that had runes carved into them stretched for several tens of thousands of feet into the sky, striking the onlooker with a sense of awe and fear. Outside this massive wall, there was a large number of human and demons patrols guarding this area day and night, and all types of restriction formations were also constantly activated. Letter 1D453, letter 1D633, letter 1D452, letter 1D452, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D626, letter 1D624, letter 1D450, letter 1D450A. Within the city wall, there was an army of over 1 million humans and demons that was permanently situated in the city. Such meticulous defensive measures ensured that Deep Heaven City had never been successfully invaded by foreign races ever since the day of its founding. In comparison, the city wall on the other side was nowhere near as imposing and well guarded. However, it stretched for over 500 kilometers, and there were many humans and demons who would access it to enter and exit the 3 regions and 7 territories. Most of these beings were planning to go on adventures in the primordial world, while the rest were coming to buy and sell things in Deep Heaven City. As such, the city was an extremely lively and bustling place. After exiting the boundaries of Deep Heaven City, there was a vast stretch of mountain ranges and the occasional small mortal settlement. However, there was definitely no second cultivator city. On one hand, these mortal settlements provided some essential supplies for Deep Heaven City, and on the other hand, They provided a constant supply of low-grade cultivators and body refinement warriors. Of course, in the areas that had been assigned to the demon race, there were also countless beasts and low-grade demon beasts, thereby providing replenishments to the demons in the city. The humans and demons were forced to join forces and guard Deep Heaven City together here in this spirit realm, but the inevitable truth was that the two races did not see eye to eye. As such, in order to prevent interracial conflict, the entire city was split in half using a massive light barrier, with each race governing one half of the city. As for the area outside the city, there was also an unnamed no-man's land, acting as the border while each race governed half of that land. The only place where humans and demons could coexist was the Elder Tower at the center of the city. Not only was this tower several times thicker than other massive towers, it was also where the most powerful beings in the city were gathered. Among them, there were a dozen or so body integration stage elders from both races who made decisions on important matters. As such, this tower appeared extremely mysterious in the eyes of the city's residents. The place that Han Li was situated at was over 10 kilometers away from the Elder Tower. He looked at the massive azure stone tower that extended all the way up into the clouds, and his eyes were flashing with a contemplative light. According to his knowledge, there was always at least one body integration stage elder each from the human and demon races that were stationed at the tower, and that was a rather disheartening notion to Han Li. Back in the human world, all deity transformation cultivators were extremely mysterious, and it was very difficult to encounter one. However, here in Deep Heaven City, he was so close to even body integration cultivators, and he could ask them for guidance in the future. It appeared that prior to cleansing himself of the aura of an alternate realm, this was a good place to stay. Han Li was hovering in midair with a contemplative look on his face. He naturally wasn't thinking about his battle against the man with the Wang surname. He had even faced spatial tempering cultivators in the past, so this wasn't a concern for him. After inspecting the city for a while longer, Han Li flew back toward the flying spirit palace as a streak of azure light. After returning to his own room, Han Li immediately deactivated the restriction, and he only made his way into the secret chamber before sitting down with his legs crossed after verifying that nothing was amiss. Even though he was rather confident in his ability to emerge victorious in the upcoming battle, he naturally wasn't going to make no preparations at all. However, prior to that, he had a small matter to take care of. Han Li rustled a sleeve and a petite little silver bracelet appeared in his other hand. The bracelet appeared to be extremely intricately crafted, yet was extremely light, thereby suggesting that it was a hollow object. This was none other than a spirit beast bracelet, which was similar in nature to the storage bracelets of the spirit realm. The space within the bracelet was split up into several compartments, different types of spirit insects and spirit beast could be stored in it at once. Following his trip to the setting sun tomb, Han Li had stored all of his spirit beasts into the bracelet, including his gold-devouring beetles and weeping soul beast. As such, his spirit beast pouch was naturally in disuse now. He swept a hand over the bracelet, and a fist-sized ball of yellow light immediately emerged from within. The ball of light rapidly expanded before transforming into a little beast that was around a foot or so in size with its body tightly bound by azure ropes. It was none other than the mutated leopard Kirin beast that had been captured by the spirit tribe beings in the setting sun tomb. After sifting through Xian's memories, Han Li had learned that even though this little beast appeared to be no different from a normal leopard, it actually possessed traces of a Kirin's bloodline. Furthermore, it was a mutated leopard Kirin beast, so it already possessed nascent soul stage power even though it hadn't yet reached full maturity. After Han Li had recovered his magic power, he had naturally considered taming the beast. However, this beast was extremely feral and already possessed a certain degree of intelligence, and it appeared that it would rather die than submit to Han Li. As such, Han Li had no choice but to put it into the spirit beast pouch to try and grind down its rough edges through captivity. After being detained for several decades, the little beast was finally at the end of its wits. A few days ago, the spirit beast had sent a signal to him from within the bracelet, expressing an urge to submit to Han Li. However, Han Li was busy preparing for his tribulation transcendence as well as a string of other events, so he had no time to take care of this matter. He now had 3 days, within which he could tame this little beast. As soon as the little beast appeared from the spirit beast pouch, it immediately began to whine at Han with a beseeching look in its green eyes. In conjunction with its petite little feline body, it was rather adorable. I'm going to place a restriction on your body now. If you accept the restrictions, I'll release you from your bindings and I'll also give you some benefits. Otherwise, I'll lock you up for another century. Han Li immediately delivered a cold threat. The little beast wasn't a highly intelligent creature, but it had clearly understood Han Li's words. Its body shuddered as it considered the prospect of captivity for another century, and it could only nod its furry little head. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he flipped a hand over to produce a dozen or so thin silver needles. He then raised his hand, and all of the silver needles disappeared into the little beast's body in a flash. Immediately thereafter, Han Li brought out a vibrant red talisman. He opened his mouth to expel a ball of blood essence before pinching the talisman between his fingers and gently waving it through the air. The talisman transformed into a ball of blood mist that refused to dissipate. Han Li then began to chant something before patting the top of his own head. Azure light flashed, and a nascent soul that was several inches in size appeared atop a miniature cauldron. As soon as the nascent soul appeared, it opened its mouth to blast out a ball of green light. As soon as the green light appeared, the blood mist surged toward it, and the two quickly combined to form a ball of green and red light. The nascent soul then made a hand seal and cast several incantation seals into the ball of light. All of a sudden, the ball of light began to surge and churn violently, transforming into a fist-sized ghostly head with a set of sinister facial features. The nascent soul pointed toward the little beast, following which the ghostly head opened its mouth before burrowing itself into the little beast's head in a flash. The little beast let loose a loud cry before falling unconscious to the ground, with its eyes rolled over into the back of its head. At the same time, a layer of green and red light began to flash erratically all over its body. A pleased look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and he made a grabbing motion toward the little beast. A muffled thump rang out as the azure ropes around the little beast's body snapped into countless segments before disappearing. Han Li then paid no further heed to the little beast as he began to close his eyes in meditation. In the remaining time, Han Li remained in his secret chamber, and 3 days passed by in the blink of an eye. On the morning of the 4th day, a streak of light flashed through the restriction outside the door, flying toward the secret chamber within which Han Li was situated. However, after flying into the door of the secret chamber, a layer of white light surfaced to repel the streak of light. It then attempted to fly through the door again to a veil, and it immediately began to emit a ringing sound. All of a sudden, azure light flashed, and a humanoid figure appeared out of thin air, reaching out before grabbing the streak of light. It was none other than Han Li, who had been in seclusion for 3 days. There was a little leopard beast sitting on his shoulder, and he delved his spiritual sense into the ball of light in his hand in an unhurried manner. This was a voice transmission talisman sent by the heavenly Jade Pavilion regarding the battle for the spirit land. The vast martial hall, eh? Han Li murmured to himself before rubbing his hands together, and the ball of light immediately disappeared. He then strode directly over to the door. 4 hours later, in the air high above an outdoor plaza, Han Li hovered in midair within a massive barrier of white light. Outside the light barrier, there was a burly man wearing a suit of golden armor with a scar on his face, wearing a cold expression. Time passed by slowly, and Han Li continued to wait patiently, but the same could not be said for the man clad in golden armor. He looked up at the 7 scorching suns in the sky from time to time, as if he were calculating the amount of time that had elapsed. All of a sudden, spiritual light flashed in the distance, following which a streak of blue light shot forth. It appeared beside the light barrier in the blink of an eye before the light receded to reveal a cultivator. "Please forgive me, Senior. I'm late because I was refining a treasure. I hope I'm not too late." The man extended a respectful bow toward the armor-clad cultivator with a fawning smile on his face. This man was none other than the man with the Wang surname. The armor-clad man replied coldly, "HMPH, if you had come any later I would have disqualified you. You're lucky that you made it in the nick of time. Get up there now." He then made a hand seal and cast a golden incantation seal toward the white light barrier. Immediately thereafter, brilliant spiritual light erupted from the barrier, following which a passageway around 10 feet wide opened up before Han Li's opponent. "Thank you, Senior." The man was ecstatic as he shot forth into the light barrier as a streak of blue light. When he cast his gaze toward Han Li, a twisted, sinister smile appeared on his face. "So you really came. Looks like you have some guts after all. To think that you would dare to accept my challenge as a mere early deity transformation cultivator, the man said in a sinister voice. And Li merely gave a lazy smile response, as if he couldn't even be bothered to offer a reply. The man was immediately enraged upon seeing this, and the killing intent in his heart grew even fiercer. Listen, there are no rules or restrictions in this battle. As long as you don't leave the boundaries of this restriction, anything goes. Unless one side surrenders in a verbal concession, I won't step in. If you feel like you're not up to the task, then it's best to concede early on. Not many people have perished during battles for spirit lands, but it's rather common for severe injuries to be inflicted. If neither of you have any objections, then we'll begin soon, the armor-clad cultivator announced. Han Li and his opponent looked at one another from afar, and neither of them said anything. The armor-clad man nodded and loudly declared, "Begin." Han Li and his opponent sprang into action at the exact same moment. In the face of an opponent whom even late deity transformation cultivators treated with respect, Han Li naturally wasn't going to make the mistake of underestimation and complacency. He rustled his sleeve, and 72 small swords shot forth in a frenzy, each of which was around an inch in length. Amid a burst of shimmering golden light, they transformed into golden lotus flowers that circled around Han Li's body. At the same time, he opened his mouth to expel a miniature cauldron. The cauldron swelled to around 10 feet in size amid a burst of brilliant spiritual light. It was none other than the heaven-void cauldron. In contrast, the man with sharp brows made a hand seal, and specks of blue light began to emanate from his body. These specks of light were only around the size of grains of rice, but there was an innumerable amount, and they almost inundated his entire body. The man then made a grabbing motion, and a ball of piercing silver light flashed, following which a shimmering silver wheel appeared over his hand. The wheel was around the size of a palm and was quite an antiquated artifact. From the layers of runes carved onto the surface of the wheel, it was quite apparent that this was an extraordinary item. The silver wheel was tossed into the air and immediately transformed into a ball of silver light. Following a string of urgent chants, the ball of light began to swell drastically. Moments later, it transformed into a massive ball around 30 to 40 feet in size, hovering directly above his head like a silver sun. After doing all that, he cast his gaze toward Han Li, and his expression stiffened involuntarily. The 72 golden flying swords weren't all that fearsome to him, but the massive azure cauldron hovering before Han Li made his heart jolt in shock. Even though it was impossible to identify the caliber and ability of the treasures based on its appearance alone, generally speaking, cauldron, lamp, and mirror treasures all had some special abilities that were very hard to defend against. In particular, the heaven-void cauldron was emanating spiritual pressure far beyond that of a normal treasure, so Han Li's opponent immediately became quite wary. He had a feeling that this battle wasn't going to be a very easy one. With that in mind, he immediately unleashed the first attack without any hesitation, hoping to seize the initiative. At the same time, he made a hand seal, and the specks of blue light around his body receded, transforming into grains of shimmering blue sand that rose up into the sky. These grains of sand then began to multiply at a staggering rate, obscuring the entire sky in the blink of an eye. Simultaneously, the massive silver wheel also vanished within the cloud of sand. A loud cry erupted as the cloud of sand came crashing down toward Han Li, creating a sound akin to thunderclaps from the countless sand particles grating against one another. Han Li's eyes narrowed upon seeing this, but he didn't immediately take any action. The golden lotus flowers twirled around him before flying up to meet the oncoming attack. As the lotus flowers flashed through the air, countless rays of light began to emanate from them, making them appear just as formidable as the blue sand cloud. As soon as the sand came into contact with the lotus flowers, the latter instantly expanded drastically to around 10 feet in size each, rotating rapidly in the sky. Their petals were like sharp blades, forcibly tearing through the sand cloud amid a string of resounding booms. The 72 golden lotus flower had managed to stop the oncoming blue sandstorm dead in its tracks. A hint of surprise flashed through the eyes of Han Li's opponent, but he then chuckled coldly as he cast an incantation seal. Silver light suddenly flashed within the sand cloud as a massive silver wheel emerged, crashing down with violent force and striking one of the 72 golden lotus flowers. A sinister smile appeared on the man's face. This metal-severing wheel was refined using a rare material sourced from the primordial world, dark gold sand. The wheel's sharpness was unmatched, and its destructive power stood well above that of normal flying swords and flying sabers. Ever since he had refined this treasure, they had helped him slice through countless flying sword treasures unleashed by his enemies. Those golden flying swords did appear to be quite powerful, but they shouldn't stand a chance against the silver wheel. A string of clangs rang out in rapid succession as dazzling golden and silver light intertwined with one another. The two treasures appeared to be evenly matched. The man's expression changed slightly upon seeing this. All of a sudden, the golden lotus flower suddenly spread open its petals to encapsulate the entire silver wheel. An anguished screech sounded from the wheel before it was shattered into countless pieces and disappeared into the lotus flower. Before the man had a chance to recover from his shock, Han Li pointed a finger toward the massive cauldron hovering before him. The lid on the cauldron immediately flew off of its own accord, following which countless streaks of azure light swept forth from within. The azure strands flashed past the golden lotus flowers, latching onto large clumps of the blue sand in the sky before dragging them back into the cauldron. Han Li had taken these measures as fast as lightning, and when his opponent finally returned to his senses, some of his blue sand had already been abducted into the cauldron, and his connection with those grains of sand had been completely severed. "Spirit treasures," the man exclaimed. The blue sand and that metal-severing wheel were both treasures that he had personally refined. Aside from spirit treasures, no other treasures would be able to forcibly take them from him. Now that they had been taken away, over a century of arduous cultivation had gone to waste. With that in mind, he immediately opened his mouth to expel a fist-sized ball of blood essence. He extended his index finger and dipped it into the ball of blood essence, using it as ink to inscribe a crimson rune into the air. He then slammed a hand toward the rune, following which it disappeared in a flash. However, in the next instant, the rune reappeared only around 10 feet away from Han Li, having already transformed into a massive azure ghostly head with a pair of sharp horns before pouncing toward Han Li. It appeared that he was trying to use this surprise attack to force Han Li to stop acquiring the blue sand and silver wheel treasures. Han Li was in the process of making hand seals while the heaven-void cauldron assimilated the blue sand at his behest. As soon as the ghostly head appeared, it rushed toward him with ferocious might, but he remained completely unflustered as he abruptly opened his mouth. An arc of golden lightning shot forth from within, striking the ghostly head with unerring accuracy, causing it to vanish into a cloud of azure smoke. Even an avatar of the Elder Devil didn't dare to take an attack head-on from the divine Devilbane lightning, so this ghostly head naturally stood no chance at all. Han Li's opponent faltered upon seeing this. A thought then occurred to him, and his expression darkened significantly. At this point, the strands of azure light from the heaven-void cauldron had already taken half of the blue sand in the sky. A bone-chilling harumph sounded as Han Li's opponent furrowed his brows, then made a strange hand seal. At the same time, what sounded like Buddhist chants rang out, following which he slowly pointed a finger toward the air before him. The grains of blue sand that were locked in a fierce battle with the azure light and the golden lotus flowers suddenly became completely stationary. Immediately thereafter, brilliant spiritual light erupted as the grains of sand began to expand drastically. In the blink of an eye, these tiny rice-sized grains of sand transformed into head-sized blue rocks, all of which were translucent and giving off vibrant blue light. These glittering and translucent rocks immediately came crashing down from above, finally causing the freely rotating golden lotus flowers to slow down. Even the strands of azure light from the heaven-void cauldron also became unable to draw in these heavy blue rocks. Han Li faltered upon seeing this before casting his gaze toward his opponent. He discovered that the man's entire body was radiating brilliant spiritual light while his hair danced in a frenzy around him. There was also white light flashing from within his visible orifices, and it was quite clear that he was using the power of his essence. Han Li's expression darkened as he laid a hand onto the top of his own head. All of a sudden, murky gray light erupted forth before sweeping through the air. The incredibly heavy blue translucent stones in up above immediately became almost completely weightless before being forced to revert back to their sand form. The gray light rapidly swept forth, completely capturing all of the grains of sand in the air. Not only did this turn of events cause the expression on the face of Han Li's opponent to darken even further, even the perpetually emotionless armor-clad cultivator outside the light barrier revealed a hint of surprise for the first time. It was quite clear that Han Li's divine essence-effused light had even drawn the interest of this spatial tempering cultivator. "What ability is this? Why is it able to wrest away my blue crystal sand?" the man asked with a vicious expression. Do you think I'll tell you? Han Li chuckled with a carefree expression. In his eyes, this man was only acting so cocky because his cultivation base far outstripped that of Han Li's. However, Han Li didn't know who this man was, and he also appeared to have a spatial tempering stage master. As such, he was rather cautious in his approach and had no intention of killing this man just yet. Otherwise, he would have already retaliated with a relentless storm of attacks, giving his opponent no chance to even catch his breath. Of course, this was also a sign of Han Li's extreme confidence in his current set of abilities. With the divine essence effused light, aureate sword formation, and spirit devouring heavenly flames, he wouldn't be fearful in the slightest even if he were to come up against a late deity transformation cultivator. An indecisive look appeared on the man's face. Han Li's abilities were far more powerful than he had anticipated, and defeat was not an option for him. With that in mind, he finally made a decision as he flipped both hands over at once. On one hand, a palm-sized yellow copper badge appeared with white mist swirling around it, making it impossible for anyone to glean its actual appearance. On his other hand, a silver talisman appeared, and it was filled with beveled silver text runes. Han Li's pupils immediately contracted upon seeing this, as he activated his sword arts. The golden lotus flowers that were circling around overhead suddenly converged toward the center, forming a supermassive golden lotus flower that was over 100 feet in diameter, and the gargantuan flower hurtled toward the man at Han Li's behest. As for the murky gray light up above, it came crashing down to create a gray light barrier that formed a secure cocoon around Han Li. At this moment, Han Li's opponent raised both hands at once, and the copper badge immediately hovered into the air. At the same time, brilliant white light erupted from the badge, and a projection emerged from within before rapidly expanding. A half-naked giant of a man that was around 20 feet tall soon appeared. The giant was carrying no weapons, but its skin was like translucent green jade, and there was spiritual light shimmering in its eyes. It was a humanoid puppet. Meanwhile, the silver talisman exploded into a ball of silver mist that was around a foot in size. The silver mist materialized into a giant black wolf with a pair of sinister green eyes, which were cast toward Han Li in a completely expressionless manner. After summoning these two creatures, Han Li's opponent still wasn't content. He took a deep breath, and his face suddenly turned as crimson as blood. He laid a hand onto the top of his own head, and blue light flashed up above as a blue nascent soul appeared, holding a black bell that was around an inch in size. That's the 1,000-soul bell. Has eccentric Ming gone senile? How could he lend such important treasures to his disciples? The armor-clad cultivator outside the light barrier displayed no reaction to the puppet, nor the giant black wolf, but his brows furrowed, and his expression immediately darkened at the sight of the bell in the blue nascent soul's hands. Senior, this is a treasure that I borrowed from my master. I'm not breaking any rules here, right? The blue nascent soul chuckled as it spoke in an infantile voice. HMPH, of course not. However, the 1,000-soul bell is an extremely powerful treasure, and you'll only barely be able to use it through the help of a secret technique. Even if you come out on top in this battle, you'll sustain severe injuries for forcibly using power beyond your capabilities. Are you sure you want to do this just for a plot of spirit land? The armor-clad cultivator asked in a cold voice. Thank you for your words of caution, Senior, but I've naturally thought long and hard before making this decision, the nascent soul replied. The massive golden lotus flower was almost upon it, and it immediately hurled forth the black bell in its hands in response. At the same time, the green puppet began a rush toward Han Li, expanding even further with each and every step it took. After reaching the halfway point between Han Li and his opponent, it had already swelled to more than twice its original size. Meanwhile, the giant black wolf swayed before disappearing on the spot as a burst of black mist. As soon as the black bell was hurled into the air, it released a string of crisp chimes. Han Li was suddenly struck by the feeling that a massive boom had erupted within his spiritual sense, following which his body spasmed as if he'd been electrocuted, and he almost plummeted from the sky. Han Li was naturally shocked by this development, and his great development technique activated of its own accord to send a stream of coolness circulating through his mind. His face had paled significantly, but his body was finally back to normal. That's also a spirit treasure. There's no way that a normal treasure could possess such power. A hint of wariness flashed through Han Li's heart as he reflexively retaliated. He made a hand seal, and his spiritual sense converged into a ball in his mind before being expelled toward his opponent. Meanwhile, Han Li's opponent was even more shocked than he was to see Han Li recover so easily from the effects of the Thousand Soul Bell. Even though this attack wasn't the bell's most powerful ability, it was very difficult for opponents of a lesser cultivation base to withstand such an attack. He gritted his teeth, and just as he was about to pour forth even more magic power into the bell, a burst of acute pain suddenly tore through his spiritual sense, as if a sharp spike had been forcibly stabbed into his brain. Unfortunately for him, his spiritual sense wasn't as powerful as Han Li's. As such, he was quite susceptible to Han Li's spirit-stun thorn attack, causing him to let loose a howl of pain as he threw his hands over his head, while his body completely curled up into a ball. His nascent soul also instantly disappeared into his body. In an instant, he had lost control over the Thousand Soul Bell in the air. A cold light flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this, and he completely ignored the oncoming giant puppet as he pointed a finger toward the massive golden lotus flower in the distance. The massive lotus flower immediately rotated rapidly as it came crashing down from above, encapsulating the black bell in a burst of golden light. Just as the golden lotus flower enshrouded the Thousand Soul Bell, the green puppet had swelled to around 60 to 70 feet in size, raising a massive fist before swinging it violently toward Han Li. A loud thump erupted as the puppet's punch was kept at bay by the heaven-void cauldron. However, the cauldron tremored violently as it shrank down to around half its size. This puppet possessed extraordinary strength. Meanwhile, a burst of ghastly howls rang out from within the massive golden lotus flower. A giant bell projection around 10 feet in size appeared at the center of the golden lotus flower, warding off all of the flower's sharp golden petals. At the same time, wisps of black threads emerged from within the black bell, binding the golden lotus flower, forcibly slowing down its rotation. Han Li was rather bewildered upon seeing this, yet just as he was about to inject more power into his treasure, the giant black wolf surfaced behind him like a wraith before pouncing toward him from behind. Its claws were able to pierce through Han Li's gray divine essence-effused light barrier without any trouble. The divine essence-effused light was indeed powerful, but its powers were not applicable to existences outside the realm of the 5 elemental powers. Just as the giant wolf thought that its sneak attack had succeeded, 2 shimmering golden fists suddenly hurtled toward its front paws. Following 2 resounding booms, its front paws were completely pulverized by the pair of golden fists. The wolf let loose a howl of anguish as its body shot back from the tremendous resulting force of the clash. Right at this moment, Han Li finally turned around to face it. His entire body was shimmering with golden light, making it appear as if he were a divine deity forged from gold. At the sight of the backpedaling black wolf, Han Li wore a cold expression as his body shot forth through the air. A string of afterimages was left in his wake, and he appeared above the wolf's head in the blink of an eye. After recovering his magic power, Han Li was able to unleash his shifting smoke steps. Even though this technique didn't grant him as much speed as the thunderstorm wings and the 9 gale transformations, when used in conjunction with Han Li's insanely powerful body, it was very effective for movement over short distances. Upon seeing Han Li appear above its head, the giant black wolf's feral instincts were set off as it blasted a ball of black light out of its mouth, which was aimed straight at Han Li. However, Han Li merely waved a casual golden palm through the air, and the black ball of light was swatted flying as if it were a pitiful fly. At the same time, he injected his magic power into his eyes in a frenzy, following which piercing blue light instantly erupted from his eyes, allowing him to glean the bodily structure of the entire wolf in a split second. Immediately thereafter, Han Li's body swayed before he appeared in front of the wolf's stomach in a completely expressionless manner. His hands shot forth light lightning, grabbing onto the wolf's head and one of its hind legs respectively, catching the wolf in 2 vice-like grips that completely immobilized it. He then let loose a loud roar as he brought both arms apart in one violent motion. With Han Li's current unfathomable strength, even a demon beast constructed from metal could be torn apart with ease, let alone a creature manifested from a talisman. As a result, the giant wolf's massive head was wrenched off its body in one fell swoop. As soon as the wolf was decapitated, brilliant black light erupted from its body, dissipating into bursts of tumbling black mist. However, its head was still very much alive and kicking, even while it was still clamped within Han Li's golden grasp. Han Li chuckled coldly as he grabbed the air with his other hand, following which a ball of silver flames emerged. The ball of fire transformed into a fire raven in a flash, and the latter swooped down toward the black wolf's head, following a crisp cry. Amid a howl of shock and horror, silver flames instantly engulfed the wolf's head, reducing it to a ball of black mist in the blink of an eye. Immediately thereafter, the silver flames completely devoured all of this black mist before reverting back to its fire raven form. The bird opened its mouth to expel a silver talisman, which Han Li rapidly grabbed a hold of. This talisman was none other than the one that his opponent had summoned earlier, but the light shimmering on its surface had dimmed significantly, indicating that it had expended most of its power. Meanwhile, the fire raven was blasting silver flames out of its mouth, circling around Han Li in an excited manner. Han Li then turned toward the green giant puppet over 100 feet away, before appearing above its head in a flash. The puppet had been impeded by the heaven-void cauldron, and was ramming its fists into the latter over and over again. The cauldron was knocked back around 10 feet and shrank with every single punch, but it was able to withstand an attack from the avatar of an elder demon in the past, so it certainly wasn't an easy obstacle to get around. After each successive punch, it would simply return to its original spot and expand once again to its former size, thereby repeating the process over and over again. The puppet had no intelligence to speak of, and Han Li's opponent was still reeling from the excruciating pain inflicted by the spirit's stunned thorn. As such, he couldn't manipulate the puppet, and it could only attack the giant cauldron with brute force, seeing as it wasn't capable of formulating any superior strategies. Han Li wasn't very familiar with the puppetry techniques of the spirit realm, but the puppetry techniques in the Great Development treasured scriptures left behind by the monarch of soul divergence were among the best that could be found in the human world. As such, despite this giant green puppet's obvious power, Han Li was able to immediately identify its weakness with his spirit eyes. He quickly stowed away the silver talisman in his hand before stepping forward. Golden light flashed, and he appeared almost instantaneously behind the massive puppet. A string of crackles and pops rang out from Han Li's body as he aimed vicious punch toward a certain spot right under the puppet's ribs. Prior to even making contact with the puppet, his shimmering golden fist was sweeping up immensely powerful winds that threatened to tear through space. An earth-shattering boom erupted as a massive fist indentation that was several inches deep appeared on the puppet's body right under its ribs. It was swept off its feet by the enormous force of Han Li's strike before thudding to the ground. However, Han Li refused to release the pressure as his fists rained down like a torrential storm on the exact same spot on the puppet's body. In the blink of an eye, a hole had been punctured into the puppet's body. Han Li immediately withdrew his fists before rubbing his hands together, sending an arc of golden lightning hurtling directly into the puppet's body through that hole. A series of explosions rang out from within the puppet's body, following which it began to shrink drastically amid a burst of brilliant green light. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk down to only around a foot in size before laying on the ground in a completely stationary manner. It appeared that a complex series of procedures had been undertaken to defeat the black wolf and the green puppet, but it had actually only taken Han Li the span of a few breaths. At this moment, his opponent finally recovered from the effects of the spirit's stunned thorn, just in time to witness Han Li destroying his puppet, while scintillating golden light radiated from his body. Complete mastery of the Vajra arts. You're a top-grade body refinement warrior as well, he exclaimed with incredulity etched on his face. The armor-clad cultivator outside the barrier of light didn't say anything, but he was clearly also quite astonished by what he was witnessing. Han Li turned to his opponent with a calm expression and asked, "Would you like to continue, fellow Taoist Wang?" The man's expression immediately darkened upon hearing this. "Your abilities are indeed far superior to what I'd anticipated, but do you really think that you've won? Even if I have to sacrifice the fruits of over a century of arduous cultivation, I'm going to show you the full power of this 1,000-soul bell." Han Li's opponent flew into a thunderous rage as he looked up at the black bell, which was currently grappling with a giant golden lotus flower. He then began to chant something, and blue light flashed above his head as his nascent soul emerged again. The nascent soul wore a grave expression as it made a hand seal with one hand while raising its other hand into the air. A blue pillar of light shot forth, striking the black bell with unerring accuracy as the nascent soul began to chant an unintelligible incantation. The black bell shuddered before absorbing the blue pillar of light as specks of spiritual light. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the man pointed a finger at the black bell from afar and it gave off a crisp tinkle. A burst of violent spatial fluctuations abruptly erupted from within the light barrier, following which a thin black rift appeared in the air above without any premonition. As soon as the black rift appeared, the nascent soul flicked its fingers toward the black bell in quick succession. With each successive flick of its fingers, the man's face would progressively pale further and further, while the black rift overhead widened incrementally. After many tolls of the bell, the black rift had already formed a semicircular opening, within which black qi and yin winds swirled, making it impossible for anyone to glean what was lurking within the rift. An extremely unsettling burst of cackling suddenly rang out from within. Han Li's pupils contracted as brilliant golden light erupted from his mouth. At the same time, he expelled more divine essence-effused light to protect himself. He didn't dare to get careless in the face of a spirit treasure. Right at this moment, a peculiar sequence of events unfolded. Wispy black tendrils suddenly appeared in the air around Han Li, slowly circling around him, but not expressing any urge to attack. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this, and before he could figure out what kind of technique this was, the black tendrils suddenly manifested into a black light formation that trapped Han Li right at its center. Crap! Han Li's heart jolted with shock as his divine essence-effused light hurtled toward the formation around him in a frenzy. However, it was clearly already too late. Black light flashed from the formation, and following a rush of dizziness, Han Li disappeared on the spot along with his giant cauldron and golden lotus flower. In the next instant, he stumbled into a peculiar space that was lined with black shadows, and unsettling ghostly cries rang out around him in unrelenting waves. He had been forcibly teleported into that black rift. Han Li faltered initially upon seeing this, but for some reason, a smile then appeared on his face. At the same time, the nascent soul of his opponent outside the rift hurriedly began to unleash the black bell's power again. Amid a string of tinkling chimes, the black rift slowly closed, settling to become a thin black line that was over 100 feet in length hovering in the air. The nascent soul then flashed before immediately returning to his body. Han Li's opponent then opened his eyes as a sinister smile appeared on his face. That black rift was an independent space opened up by the 1,000 soul bell. Even though its name suggested that there were only 1,000 souls within the bell, there were actually much closer to 10,000 yin souls lurking within the treasure. All of these yin souls were the souls of extremely vicious demon beasts that had been refined using a special secret technique, ensuring that they retained virtually all of the power they had in life. Furthermore, the main soul within the bell was even a mid-deity transformation stage heavenly spirit beast during its life. His master had only stumbled upon it during its dying moments in a stroke of massive fortune, thereby allowing him to refine it as the main soul of this treasure. With the assistance from the other yin souls, the main soul's power could be enhanced by around twofold. Furthermore, there was a restriction that severely debilitated the powers of all beings within the bell aside from yin souls, so all cultivators who were abducted into the treasure were placed at a severe disadvantage. As such, even a late deity transformation cultivator would most likely perish in there. The armor-clad cultivator looked up at the thin black line in the sky, and a peculiar light flashed through his eyes, but he didn't take any action. Meanwhile, Han Li's opponent sat in midair with his legs crossed, waiting for the yin souls within the treasure to devour Han Li so he could end this battle. After around 5 minutes, the black bell in the sky suddenly began to tremor violently. At the same time, erratic halos of black light began to emanate from it, and bursts of peculiar cries erupted from within, creating a very bizarre spectacle to behold. Han Li's opponent was able to use the treasure, but had not forged a spiritual connection with it, so he had no idea what was going on. The black bell suddenly let loose a grief-stricken chime, following which the massive projection around it abruptly shattered. The projection disintegrated into wisps of black qi that disappeared into the 1,000 soul bell in the blink of an eye. Impossible, the main soul was destroyed. The man finally understood what had happened, and an expression of shock and horror appeared on his face. Right at this moment, a burst of black light suddenly punctured a certain spot in the space overhead, creating a fist-sized black hole. Spiritual light flashed, and a burst of azure light shot forth through the hole, quickly revealing itself to be a humanoid figure. As a mid-deity transformation cultivator, Han Li's opponent seemed to have detected something, and he hurriedly turned toward that direction. However, the humanoid figure disappeared in the flash before suddenly reappearing behind the man, leaving a trail of afterimages in its wake. A thunderous roar erupted, making the man's ears ring as a golden fist came flying toward him. Arg! The man was stunned by this turn of events, and his body suddenly shattered like a mirror, manifesting 7 or 8 projections at once that all fled toward different directions. HMPH, you're not going anywhere. That humanoid figure was naturally none other than Han Li. He let loose a cold harumph as he launched a string of identical punches toward all of the fleeing projections at once, all of which struck the backs of the projections with unerring accuracy. All of the projections were vanquished and disappeared on the spot, but a small silver shield appeared behind the man's true body, keeping the golden fist at bay. However, the silver shield only managed to withstand the fist for a split second before it was violently shattered. The golden fist struck the man on the back without any hesitation, but right as it made contact with the man's body, a layer of azure armor suddenly appeared over his skin. A resounding boom erupted as the fist struck the suit of armor in a violent manner, amid a flash of intertwining golden and azure light. The azure light tremored violently as the fist sank several inches into the man's body, sending him flying through the air amid a howl of agony. However, Han Li was not satisfied with the outcome of that attack. His fist had been imbued with immense power, but he felt as if he had struck a wall of feathers, and only a small proportion of that power had actually impacted his opponent's body. Otherwise, that punch would have been enough to inflict a severe wound. In the instant that he was forcibly teleported into the Yin soul space, Han Li finally sensed his opponent's killing intent, so he naturally wasn't going to hold back in his attacks. Even though he was surprised by the fact that his punch seemed to have been buffered, he didn't allow his surprise to slow him down in the slightest as he instantly appeared above his opponent. He grabbed the air with a single hand, upon which a golden longsword suddenly appeared in his grasp. Just he was about to plunge the sword into his opponent's body, the latter suddenly let loose a desperate cry. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D563, letter 1D41E, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D430, letter 1D556, letter 1D41C, letter 1D698, letter 1D5FA. Stop, I concede. Han Li's lips twitched upon hearing this, but he completely disregarded this plea for mercy as he brought his sword down without any hesitation. With the insane sharpness of his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, he would definitely be able to slice the man's body cleanly in half, even with that suit of azure armor he was wearing. Spatial fluctuations suddenly erupted nearby as a swath of yellow light shot forth, sweeping up Han Li's opponent and causing him to vanish on the spot. As such, Han Li's sword struck empty air. Han Li's expression changed slightly as he turned toward a certain direction. There, over 200 feet away, a ball of yellow light suddenly erupted, following which 2 humanoid figures emerged from within. They were none other than the armor-clad overseer of the match, as well as Han Li's opponent. The former remained expressionless as usual, yet the latter's face was deathly pale, and his suit of azure armor was stained with blood as he glowered at Han Li with resentment in his eyes. It appeared that even though Han Li's punch had been buffered significantly by the suit of azure armor, his opponent had still suffered internal injuries, to the extent that he had thrown up a mouthful of blood. The fist indentation on the back of his armor was quite apparent. Han Li glanced at his opponent expressionlessly, before stowing away his longsword and extending a salute to the armor-clad cultivator. Thank you for stepping in, Senior. I was unable to withdraw my attack in time and almost wounded fellow Taoist Wang there, Han Li said with an earnest expression. His opponent almost threw up another mouthful of blood upon hearing this. Unable to withdraw his attack in time, he clearly had no intention of withdrawing his attack at all. He was striking to kill. A peculiar look flashed through the armor-clad cultivator's eyes, following which a hint of a smile appeared on his face. It's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment in a battle, so that's very much understandable. In this battle for the Spirit Land, fellow Taoist Wang has conceded, so fellow Taoist Han is naturally the victor and will take possession of the Spirit Land. Do either of you have any objections? Han Li smiled upon hearing this. He naturally wasn't going to pose any objections. His opponent wore an indignant expression and opened his mouth several times, but refrained from saying anything in the end. Seeing as neither of them said anything, the armor-clad cultivator nodded before extending a hand toward Han Li. Hand over your dark azure pendant. Han Li immediately flipped his palm over upon hearing this, summoning the azure jade pendant, which he then tossed over to the armor-clad cultivator. The latter caught the jade pendant before bringing it toward a thumb-sized green crystal in his other hand that he had already prepared in advance. The small stone immediately disappeared into the jade pendant right as the two made contact with one another. All right, the coordinates of the spirit land have already been injected into your dark azure pendant. Unless you voluntarily relinquish this plot of spirit land, you won't be able to participate in the battle for the spirit lands that's held once every century. You two can leave now. The next match is about to begin soon. The armor-clad cultivator returned the jade pendant to Han Li before waving a dismissive hand at both of them. At this moment, an opening had already appeared in the white light barrier around them. Han Li didn't say anything further as he cupped his fist in a salute toward the armor-clad cultivator, then disappeared into the distance through that opening as a streak of azure light. Meanwhile, his opponent wore a thunderous expression as he also flew away from the venue. However, he paused nearby and glowered at the direction that Han Li had left in before flying toward the opposite direction. Even though he had sustained internal injuries during that recently concluded battle, he was still flying quickly. After a short while, he had appeared high in the air over an unfamiliar place, upon which he came to an abrupt halt. "Why is your aura so chaotic? Were you injured in the battle for the spirit land?" A familiar cold voice sounded, following which azure light flashed in the air nearby. That miniature green worm appeared and inspected the man with a cold expression. "Sorry to disappoint you, Master. That man was unfathomably powerful, and I was defeated by him. If it weren't for the intervention from the heavenly guard in the end, I would have perished by that man's sword." As soon as the green worm appeared, the man hurriedly lowered his head in a respectful manner. "Your opponent is only an early deity transformation cultivator, and I even lent you my 1,000-soul bell. How did you manage to lose? When did you become so useless?" The green worm's expression darkened significantly. Cold sweat immediately began pouring down the man's face as he explained. "I did everything I could, Master, but there seemed to be no end to the tricks that my opponent could pull out of his sleeve. He had a cauldron spirit treasure, and he's also achieved complete mastery of the Vajra arts. He also has a spirit treasure, and he's completely mastered the Vajra arts." The green worm was rather surprised to hear this. "Indeed, I speak only the truth, Master." The man was slightly relieved upon hearing the hint of intrigue in the worm's voice. A contemplative expression appeared on the green worm's face before it suddenly extended a claw toward the man. A ball of black light shot forth from his body, carrying the 1,000-soul bell into the worm's grasp. Letter 1D65B, letter 1D493, letter 1D486, letter 1D65A, letter 1D498, letter 1D486, letter 1D484, letter 1D490, letter 1D4F6. It carefully inspected the bell for a while, following which its expression immediately darkened again. The man was feeling quite uneasy upon seeing this. The green worm chuckled coldly and scoffed. "So that means this man is walking the path of simultaneous cultivation. Such a style of cultivation was popular once back in ancient times, but barely anyone pursues this path now. Body refinement and cultivating magic power both take an extremely long time. Doing both works to a certain extent at low cultivation's bases, but over the long term, one's cultivation would inevitably trail behind their peers if they were to continue down this path. On top of that, body refinement requires a certain level of aptitude. As far as I'm aware of, there are only a small handful of people who have reached the body integration stage while pursuing this path, including the heavenly Yuan Holy Sovereign. All of these people were body refinement warriors to begin within, and only became cultivators after consuming some type of spirit medicine. Otherwise, walking this path will only ruin one's future cultivation. This man has already achieved full mastery of the Vajra arts. Are there any other body refinement techniques for him to use to continue strengthening his body?" The man asked with furrowed brows. Attaining full mastery of the Vajra arts is already the pinnacle among mortal body refinement warriors. The next step for him to progress is to naturally begin using some demonic cultivation arts to further refine his body. However, those cultivation arts naturally aren't meant for humans, so it'll be very perilous for him to engage in such practices. For him to be able to cultivate both his magic power and his body to such an extent makes it no surprise that you were no match for him. However, that doesn't explain how he was able to break free from my 1,000-soul bell. Not only was the main soul in the bell destroyed, around 60% to 70% of all of the other yin souls within are also missing. The worm's voice suddenly cooled as he spoke. "I don't know how he managed to do this either. I trapped him in that space, but he managed to escape not long after that, and I wasn't able to witness what he did in there," the man hurriedly explained. The worm scrutinized the man for a long time before withdrawing his gaze with a cold harumph. HMPH, the thousand soul bell isn't a powerful enough treasures to make it onto the chaotic myriad spirit roll, but it's more than powerful enough to crush a late deity transformation cultivator. It appeared that this man either possesses a treasure that is the bane of all yin souls, or has mastered an extremely powerful yang attribute cultivation art. So be it, I'll just have to capture some more beast souls to replenish the ones that are missing. However, we can't give up on the treasures left behind by that person. The man was elated that the worm wasn't pinning any further blame on him, but a hesitant look then appeared on his face as he mused. "Thank you for sparing me, master. The problem is that the plot of spirit land already belongs to that man. If he sets up restrictions around the plot of land, it'll be rather difficult for us to go in and search for treasures there. That will indeed be rather troublesome, but the plot of spirit land is quite large, and he won't be able to set up so many powerful restrictions in a short time. Go to where my true body is residing in seclusion, and I'll give you something for you to take to my good friend, Gongyang Gui. He possesses a heavenly five-colored flag that has extraordinary concealment abilities. Borrow that from him and we'll sneak into the spirit land at the right opportunity. In doing so, we'll be owing old devil Gongyang a big favor," the green worm grumbled. The man didn't dare to say anything in response, and could only nod emphatically with a respectful expression on his face. Meanwhile, Han Li had just flown out of Deep Heaven City and was traveling toward the plains outside of the city. Following the conclusion of that battle, he was heading straight toward the plot of spirit land he had chosen, rather than returning to the flying spirit palace. With Han Li's current abilities, he was able to fly extremely quickly, and it only took him an uneventful journey spanning around 3 to 4 days to reach a massive set of lush mountain ranges. This was the so-called Glorious Sound Mountain, and Han Li stopped in the air above one of the mountains in the mountain ranges. He scanned his gaze over this massive mountain, which was hundreds of thousands of kilometers in size, and his narrowed with a contemplative expression. Even though this was the most inferior of the 3 mountain ranges displayed by the heavenly Jade Pavilion, it was still a set of mountain ranges that could be used for cultivation by deity transformation cultivators, so it naturally possessed high spiritual chi density. Compared to so-called cultivation holy lands in the human world, the difference was night and day. After inspecting the mountain for a while, Han Li gave a content nod before descending into the mountain ranges as a streak of azure light. Not long after that, he had already covered a distance of over 50,000 kilometers. Even though he was racing ahead at an astonishing speed, his powerful spiritual sense allowed him to detect everything within a radius of over 5,000 kilometers. Along the way, he had already passed by 4 or 5 shimmering restrictions, which were clearly where the cave abodes of other cultivators were situated. Han Li paid no heed to these neighbors and continued to fly on ahead. After passing through almost the entirety of the mountain ranges, Han Li finally found the plot of spirit land on the map that belonged to him. The plot of land stretched for over 10,000 kilometers, and there was no end to it in sight. Furthermore, there was not even a single cultivator here aside from himself. Han Li was quite elated, but he wasn't in a hurry to build a cave abode. Instead, he flew in a circle around the annotated border on the map, which indicated the boundaries of his plot of spirit land. During the process, he would toss out white formation flags at regular intervals, all of which burrowed into the ground and disappeared. These formation flags were only treasures of the lowest grade and only possessed a very lackluster illusionary effect. They were only there for symbolic purposes, informing other nearby cultivators that this plot of land now had an owner, thereby serving as a warning against trespassers, intentional or not. After that, Han Li began to travel through this area in a leisurely manner. Over half a day later, he discovered several small spirit mines and a few naturally occurring spirit medicine patches. Of course, the spirit stones and spirit medicines that could be found at those locations were all quite low in caliber, and it was most likely the case that the previous owner of this land couldn't even be bothered to excavate and farm those sites. These sites naturally didn't really catch Han Li's eye either, but they came as a minor pleasant surprise to him. After inspecting the entire area, Han Li hovered in the air high above the center of the plot of spirit land with a contemplative look on his face, feeling a little perplexed. He didn't discover anything special about this place, but his opponent had gone to such extreme lengths during their battle, Could it really be the case that he was simply targeting this place because it was beneficial for the cultivation of one of his secret techniques? Han Li shook his head to reject the notion as soon as it appeared in his mind. His opponent's reaction to losing the battle indicated that things definitely weren't as simple as that. Furthermore, the spirit land was such a vast area. Why was he willing to go so far for this particular plot of land, to the extent that he was prepared to kill Han Li? It appeared that this place would have to be carefully searched again. Otherwise, Han Li felt as if there was something constantly nagging at him, and he wouldn't be able to cultivate with a calm heart. After making his decision, Han Li began to consider constructing a cave abode. Even though the land here was all quite similar, there were naturally a few locations where spiritual qi was especially rich and abundant. After some careful consideration, Han Li finally made a decision. As such, he immediately rose into the air as a streak of azure light and flew toward the location he had chosen. Not long after that, Han Li appeared between two massive mountains, in a place with tumbling five-colored mist. This place seemed to be a massive swamp, and the vibrant five-colored mist emanating from it reached altitudes of thousands of feet. It didn't possess extremely toxic properties, but inhalation was far from advisable, even for cultivators. Most importantly, there were some unknown constituents in this mist that restricted Han Li's spiritual sense to a certain extent, making him unable to detect what lay deep within the mist. Only after using his bright-sight spirit eyes was Han Li able to discover that several kilometers into the mist, there was a natural valley that connected the two massive mountains. Such a naturally obscure location was perfect for Han Li's cave abode. As such, Han Li flew deep into the mist before easily carving out a hole in the side of a certain nondescript rock face within the valley. He then released his flying swords to dig out two extremely long passageways that led directly into the bellies of the two giant mountains. He was planning to construct two cave abodes at once. One of them was a hoax that would be used as a diversion, while the other one was the cave abode in which he would cultivate, as well as nurture his spirit insects, spirit beasts, and spirit medicines. As for that hidden fortune abode, it was too small, so there was naturally no need to use it now. After constructing his cave abodes, Han Li immediately transferred the spirit herbs and spirit medicines he'd taken here from the human world into the medicine garden. The gold-devouring beetles were also placed into an enclosure. After being nurtured for so many years, all of the gold-devouring beetles had reached astonishing sizes and appeared to be extremely menacing. They were clearly already close to full maturity. As for that leopard Kirin beast, Han Li also prepared a comfortable nest for it so it could cultivate on its own. However, after walking into a particularly eerie, empty beast room, a solemn look appeared on Han Li's face. He gently waved his spirit beast bracelet toward the beast room, following which a burst of black light swept forth, and a black object that was around 10 feet tall abruptly appeared. The object was round and resembled a cocoon. It was emitting faint black light, and the image of a crimson malicious spirit could be seen on its surface. The malicious spirit possessed a single horn and 3 eyes, giving off a very sinister appearance. This cocoon was naturally formed by the Weeping Soul Beast. Back when the Weeping Soul Beast had last evolved, it had also transformed into a black cocoon just like this one. The image of the malicious spirit on the cocoon was identical to the one on the Weeping Soul Beast's back. Han Li stroked his chin as he looked at this cocoon, and a hint of elation flashed through his eyes. During the battle for the spirit land, when he was sucked into the yin soul space, he had immediately sensed the abundant yin qi in the air. Immediately thereafter, countless vicious souls materialized, all of which swept directly toward Han Li, led by a powerful ghostly monarch. Han Li naturally released his Weeping Soul Beast without any hesitation upon seeing this. This beast possessed the incredible ability to devour souls, and as light poured forth from its nostrils, none of the normal yin souls were able to put up any resistance as they were reduced to sustenance for the Weeping Soul Beast. Only that ghostly monarch was a little troublesome to deal with. It had cultivated its body to take on a substantial form, thus allowing it to resist the Weeping Soul Beast's light. However, Han Li used his thunderstorm wings to appear behind it and unleash a sneak attack with his divine Devilbane lightning, upon which the situation changed drastically. After being wounded, the ghostly monarch was no longer able to use its secret technique to stabilize its soul. In the end, the Weeping Soul Beast swooped in to devour the ghostly monarch during its battle with Han Li. After engulfing so many vicious souls and this final ghostly monarch, which possessed powers comparable to a deity transformation cultivator, The weeping soul beast immediately broke through its evolution bottleneck, thereby transforming into this black cocoon. Thankfully, Han Li had witnessed the same phenomenon in the past, so he was filled with elation rather than panic. As such, he didn't have any time to take care of the rest of the vicious soul, as he forcibly broke out of the yin soul space with his law destruction eye, escaping into the outside world with this cocoon. Now, he was placing the giant cocoon into this beast room, and he would only have to wait for some time for the weeping soul beast to complete its evolution. Han Li took one final long look at this cocoon before departing from this room, heading for his medicine garden instead. The ninth spirit ginseng, dragon scale fruits, and other spirit medicines in the garden were quite rare even in the spirit realm, so Han Li had to treat them with care. The only thing that was missing was the profound goddess's palm that Han Li had painstakingly nurtured. The palm had borne fruit in the human world, but it had completely wilted and disintegrated into dust as soon as Han Li took this fruit. What was even more incredible was that the several cuttings he had taken from the palm in advance also disintegrated. Thus, there was no way for him to plant it again. It was most likely the case that not only had all of his cuttings been ruined, all of the cuttings carried by others had to have also ceased to exist. That was the effect of the law of exclusivity. No profound goddess's palms could exist in the same world, and that was something that Han Li couldn't change. Even the deity transformation and spatial tempering cultivators in the spirit realm were powerless to alter the laws of heaven and earth. They were only capable of using the world's origin chi around them. It would take beings of higher levels to be able to control such things. Perhaps beings as powerful as heavenly true spirits would be capable of such a task. This was also an indication of just how much the profound heavenly fruit defied the natural order. At the thought of the profound heavenly fruit that he had finally obtained after several hundred years of work, Han Li was struck by a sense of excitement and elation. Due to his ascension and his subsequent complete loss of magic power, he hadn't had any time to carefully inspect the profound heavenly fruit. Now he had some time before he had to report back to Deep Heaven City, and that was a sufficient interval for him to do some research on the fruit. As such, after setting up all of the required restrictions outside the cave abode, Han Li made his way into a secret chamber and sat down onto the ground with his legs crossed. He flipped a hand over, and a pristine white box appeared over his palm. The surface of the jade box was plastered with 7 or 8 restriction talismans, all of which were shimmering with spiritual light. After a brief hesitation, Han Li tore off the talismans before slowly removing the lid of the box. A shimmering white object that was several inches in length appeared before Han Li's eyes. He extended a hand to extricate this object from the jade box, then carefully inspected it while stroking it with his finger. The object was of a thin oval shape, and its surface was extremely smooth. It was ever so slightly yellow in color, and one end was slightly blunt, while the other was completely even, as if it had been chopped by a blade. It looked like a small oval rod. However, it was only around half a foot in total length. On the surface of the rod, there was a series of indecipherable dark green patterns. The rod appeared to be made from something that was a blend of metal and wood, and it was quite supple to the touch. This peculiar rod was the fruit from the profound goddess's palm. The humanoid puppet had informed him that in the beginning, the fruit from the palm wasn't like this in the beginning. Instead, it was a spherical fruit that was shimmering with white light, and it only became like this after being fertilized by the green liquid for years on end. Han Li was rather speechless when he first caught sight of this strange object. Back when he had just obtained this fruit, he had only examined it for a short time, but he was still struck by how peculiar this thing was. Letter 1D4F, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D4E, letter 1D65A, letter 1D66C, letter 1D4E, letter 1D48F, letter 1D484, letter 1D490, letter 1D4F6. However, he was busy working toward ascension to the spirit realm at the time, so he didn't put in any diligent research. After a brief pause, Han Li carried the object with one hand while extending a finger from his other hand. Azure spiritual light flashed from his fingertip as he gently tapped it against the rod. The azure spiritual light tremored as if it had come into contact with some kind of restriction before completely dissipating, unable to penetrate so much as a single millimeter into the fruit's surface. Han Li raised his eyebrows, but he wasn't surprised to see this. This fruit had always rejected any injections of spiritual chi, and no spiritual power could be infused into it. After staring at it for a while longer, A thought occurred to Han Li as golden light shimmered from the hand that was carrying the fruit. A peculiar scene then unfolded. Han Li was able to sink his fingers into the fruit with ease, causing it to warp and distort as if were made from soft dough. However, when Han Li released the fruit again, it instantly reverted back to its original rod form. Han Li suddenly opened his mouth to expel a thin golden thread, which circled around the fruit once before returning to Han Li's mouth. However, the sword thread formed by the azure bamboo cloudswarm sword wasn't even able to leave the slightest trace on the surface of the fruit. Han Li was quite intrigued to see this, and he flicked his finger to blast an arc of golden lightning onto the rod. The arc of lightning was repelled by the fruit, striking a corner of the secret chamber, causing the entire chamber to tremor slightly due to the force of the resulting explosion. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he grabbed the air with his other hand, following which an egg-sized ball of silver flames emerged over his palm. Han Li immediately tossed the fruit into the fireball without any hesitation, but Han Li was disappointed by what he saw next. As soon as the fruit was hurled toward the fireball, the latter suddenly dissipated into specks of silver flames, before materializing to form that spirit-devouring fire raven in the air several tens of feet away. As soon as the fire raven appeared, it stared intently at the fruit with horror in its eyes, letting loose a few sharp and urgent cries to express its fear. Han Li's brows furrowed even further as he grabbed a hold of the fruit again. His spirit-devouring heavenly flames were a culmination of the most powerful yin and yang flames. How could it be terrified of a piece of fruit? That was truly a surprise to him. Could it be that this fruit was even more mysterious and profound than he had anticipated? Immediately thereafter, Han Li brought out his glacial flames, wind blades, and various other types of attacks to experiment on the fruit, only for it to remain completely unscathed throughout this sustained assault. Han Li had even brought out a few gold-devouring beetles from the insect room and placed them onto the fruit. In his memories, the gold-devouring beetles were capable of engulfing anything and everything, yet they displayed a similar reaction to the spirit-devouring fire raven, hurriedly flying away in a panic frenzy with no intention to try and devour this object whatsoever. Han Li then tried using his law-destruction eye to attack the fruit, all to no avail either. Despite Han Li's vast array of abilities, he was completely stumped and was left scratching his head. He then injected all of his power into his eyes, upon which piercing blue light erupted from his pupils. He was trying to glean the internal structure of this fruit using his spirit eyes. Much to his surprise, his spirit eyes revealed to him a pea-sized speck of white light within the fruit that was flashing in an extremely feeble manner. Han Li was immediately reinvigorated upon making this discovery. However, further inspection yielded no other results. During the next half a month or so, Han Li was almost constantly carrying out experiments on the profound heavenly fruit. During the final few days, he even set up a few profound miniature formations within his secret chamber, trying to use the power of the formations to refine this fruit, but none of that worked either. On the final night, Han Li stroked the profound heavenly fruit with his finger, but his expression was completely calm and devoid of urgency. It appeared that without encountering any miraculous opportunities, he wouldn't be able to do anything to or with this fruit. However, after transcending his emotions of frustration and urgency, his mental state had become more resolute than ever. As such, the past half a month or so wasn't a complete waste of time. However, he had to return to Deep Heaven City the next day. With that in mind, Han Li cast his gaze toward the profound heavenly fruit in his hand again, this time choosing to inspect the dark green patterns that he had paid minimal attention to in the past. All of a sudden, an extremely peculiar look appeared in Han Li's eyes as a startling thought occurred to him. The diagram depicted by and the colors of the patterns suddenly reminded him of something. There was another object with similar patterns on its surface, and even though its color wasn't completely identical to that of the profound heavenly fruit, it bore a strong resemblance. Why hadn't he thought of this object before? Han Li suddenly reached for his storage bracelet, and a nondescript-looking leather bag appeared in his hand. He tipped the bag over, and a small green vial came tumbling out into his grasp. It was none other than that mysterious little vial. Han Li held the vial in one hand, and the profound heavenly fruit in the other, as he inspected the two side by side through narrowed eyes. The two items were different both in shape and mass, but the dark green patterns on their surfaces really did bear a strong resemblance. Could it be that the two objects were connected somehow? Could it be that the mysterious little vial was refined from a profound heavenly fruit? Han Li's heart rate began to accelerate as he considered the small vial's incredible abilities. The more the thought about it, the plausible this notion seemed. The small vial was made from a different material compared to the profound heavenly fruit, but it was also a material that he had yet to decipher the origins of. He inspected the objects in his hands before exhaling, as he cast his gaze toward the small vial. All of a sudden, he placed the profound heavenly fruit on the ground before removing the lid off the mysterious little vial. A drop of green liquid dripped soundlessly onto the fruit. The scenes that followed struck Han Li with a sense of elation. Azure light flashed from the drop of liquid before it disappeared into the profound heavenly fruit. Brilliant blue light erupted from Han Li's eyes again as he gleaned the internal situation within the fruit. As soon as the drop of green liquid disappeared into the fruit, it immediately fused with the speck of white light at its center. A few moments later, the feeble speck of white light expanded slightly. Han Li's heart stirred upon seeing this, but there were no further changes to the white light following further observation, and the blue light in Han Li's gradually faded. He lowered his head with a contemplative expression as he considered what he'd just seen. It appeared that only the mysterious green liquid in the small vial had any effect on the profound heavenly fruit. He didn't know what purpose that speck of white light could serve, but it appeared that the only way to find out was to continue feeding the green liquid to the fruit. After thinking to himself for a long while, Han Li carefully stowed away both the small vial and the profound heavenly fruit. He was going to infuse the green liquid into the fruit at regular intervals. Unbeknownst to Han Li, in the same instant that the green liquid disappeared into the white light within the profound heavenly fruit, something was happening in the heavenly spirit region of the three human regions, which was countless kilometers away from Deep Heaven City. At the center of a small island that was hovering tens of thousands of kilometers in the air, golden light suddenly erupted from a translucent jade wall that was inscribed full of golden and silver runes. At the same time, a crisp cry rang out, spreading throughout the entire island. Two green-robed cultivators who were seated in front of the jade wall with their eyes closed both opened their eyes in unison with shock etched on their faces. Golden light. Could it be that another divine spirit treasure has appeared? One of them exclaimed. The other cultivator remained silent, but his eyes were also filled with elation as he looked at the jade wall. All of a sudden, a dozen or so streaks of light shot forth from various locations all over the island, all of which converged toward the jade wall. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, a dozen or so green-robed cultivators had gathered before the wall, all of whom were scrutinizing the golden light with excitement in their eyes. A few moments later, the golden light from the jade wall gradually faded, which made the dozen or so cultivators rather nervous. All of them stared at the jade wall without even daring to blink, as if they were petrified of missing something. The third line of golden runes on the jade wall suddenly blurred before moving down a line. Meanwhile, a new line of golden text appeared on the vacated third line. All of the excited cultivators' expressions immediately stiffened. Everyone stared at the third line of golden runes with flabbergasted looks on their faces. It's a profound heavenly spirit artifact, and it's climbed to third on the roll as soon as it appeared. After a long while, an elderly green-robed man murmured to himself, "Heavens, could it be that another true spirit tribulation is about to descend upon our spirit realm?" All of the other cultivators were also alerted to this possibility upon hearing this, and all of their faces paled as horrified expressions appeared in their eyes. None of them seemed to want to say anything. Finally, the golden light on the jade wall completely faded, and everything returned to normal. Looking up above the jade wall, there was a silver plaque that was over 100 feet in length, hovering roughly 10 feet above the wall. There was a string of golden text on the plaque that read, "Chaotic Myriad Spirit Roll." Not long after that, streaks of light shot forth from the island, heading toward the three human regions and the 7 demon territories. At the same time, within the restricted areas of the larger races in the primordial world, similar changes were taking place on all of the jade walls there. The same information was being relayed to all of the races, and this development had stunned all of the higher-ups among them. Not long after that, all of the higher-ups among the various races, including the human and demon races, had burst into an uproar. It appeared that the spirit realm hadn't changed at all, but drastic changes were taking place beneath the visible surface. All races were bolstering their defenses in anticipation for the ordeal that could befall them soon. Of course, as the instigator behind all of this, Han Li himself was completely oblivious to what was happening. He was currently meditating in his cave abode, preparing to return to Deep Heaven City the next day. Time passed by slowly, and just as daylight was about to arrive outside the cave abode, Han Li abruptly opened his eyes as an elated look appeared on his face. He immediately rose to his feet before rushing out of his secret chamber, heading straight for one of the beast rooms. Han Li stood outside the beast room and peered in through a window, upon which he was completely rooted to the spot. A head-sized hole had been punctured into massive black cocoon within the room, and the cocoon was now completely empty. Directly above the cocoon, there was an inky black cloud hovering in midair, creating quite a mysterious sight to behold. Han Li was quite startled to see this, but he still cast an incantation seal toward the door of the room with furrowed brows. Azure light immediately flashed from the door as an invisible restriction was lifted. The door gradually rose up, and Han Li strode into the room. The black cloud in the air, which was around 10 feet in size, didn't display any reaction to Han Li's arrival. Han Li stared up at the cloud before making a hand seal. He opened his mouth, a black bead shot forth from within. It was none other than the Weeping Soul bead that he had refined long ago. Han Li began to chant something as he pointed a finger at the Weeping Soul bead. Green light flashed from the bead, and its surface began to flash erratically. The dark cloud in the air finally began to react. Gusts of powerful yin winds were swept up around it, and at the same time, arcs of black lightning erupted within the cloud amid a series of rumbling thunderclaps. The bead hovering before Han Li also began to vibrate, and the green light emanating from it began to brighten significantly. Han Li's expression changed upon seeing this. He could sense resistance from the dark cloud, as if it were trying to shrug off the call of the Weeping Soul bead. Following its evolution, the Weeping Soul beast was following in the footsteps of the six-winged frost centipede, trying to escape from Han Li's control. Letter 1D4BB, letter 1D633, letter 212F, letter 212F, letter 1D464, letter 212F, letter 1D4B7, letter 1D450, letter 2134, letter 1D45A. However, Han Li had now recovered all of his powers, so he naturally wasn't going to allow this to happen. He immediately began to circulate his magic power as he flicked his 10 fingers in quick succession, casting incantation seals of different colors, all of which disappeared into the Weeping Soul bead. The bead let loose an anguished cry, following which the brilliant green light radiating from it began to dim again. At this moment, a massive thunderclap erupted from the dark cloud, following which a dark figure emerged from within amid countless arcs of black lightning. The creature descended right in front of Han Li, staring intently at the black bead with a conflicted light in its crimson eyes. Han Li's heart jolted, but upon catching sight of the appearance of the creature standing before him, a peculiar look appeared on his face. His expression was a mixture of astonishment, surprise, and exasperation. The figure standing before him was another black-robed Han Li. Aside from the fact that the color of its robes was different, it was completely identical to Han Li down to the very last detail. Upon seeing this expression on Han Li's face, Han Li also adopted the same expression, making Han Li feel as if he were peering into a mirror. Han Li was silent for a long while before his brows furrowed as he asked, "You're the Weeping Soul beast?" The black-robed Han Li put on a bashful smile as he replied, "Master, I am, Weeping Soul." His voice was extremely coarse, but he spoke with the proficiency of an infant. Han Li had already ascertained this being's identity through his connection with the Weeping Soul bead, but he was still struck by a sense of shock upon hearing the beast's reply. "Have you taken on a permanent form, or have you learned a transformation technique?" The black-robed Han Li's mouth gaped open upon hearing this, and it seemed to be at a loss for how to reply. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this before a wry smile appeared on his face. The Weeping Soul beast had just attained intelligence, but how was it supposed to know everything straight away? He had to inject some knowledge into the beast's mind before it would be able to formulate a reply. This was a rather difficult task for other cultivators, but it was very simple for Han Li. He abruptly placed a hand over the top of his own head, following which black light flashed, and a black nascent soul that was around an inch in size appeared. This was none other than Han Li's second nascent soul. Back when Han Li had recovered his magic power, he had also materialized this second nascent soul again. However, this nascent soul still only possessed nascent soul stage power, so it wasn't much use for Han Li in battle. As such, Han Li was planning to infuse it into a puppet to help him to look after the cave abode. Thus, the nascent soul shot forth and disappeared into the body of the black-robed Han Li. Black lightning flashed all over the black-robed Han Li's body, and a painful expression appeared on his face. Han Li used the second nascent soul to inject some information about language and cultivation art slowly into the weeping soul beast's spiritual sense. Thankfully, he was able to do this with this second nascent soul as a medium. Otherwise, no other deity transformation cultivator would dare to adopt such an injection method. After a while, the black-robed Han Li's wooden eyes gradually became clearer, seemingly having attained a lot of knowledge. Han Li withdrew his hand seal before waving a hand toward the beast. The second nascent soul immediately flew out of the weeping soul beast's, yet the spiritual light shimmering from the former had dimmed significantly, looking as if it had expended a lot of energy during that process. The nascent soul swayed before disappearing into Han Li's body again. "You understand what I'm asking you now, right?" Han Li asked. The weeping soul beast blinked, and only after a long while did it reply, "I'm imitating Master's form, but I can transform into other forms as well." Even though it had attained a lot of knowledge, the weeping soul beast was still like a newborn infant, so it didn't even know how to lie. Furthermore, it had been nurtured by Han Li for a long time, and its attempt to escape from Han Li's control was only an unconscious resistant reaction. After attaining intelligence, it no longer had any intention to resist Han Li and had become extremely respectful toward him instead. That was why it had decided to transform into Han Li for its first transformation. Through his connection with the weeping soul bead, Han Li could roughly glean what the weeping soul beast was thinking, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He opened his mouth, and the weeping soul beast disappeared down his throat as a wisp of black smoke. "Can you show me your transformation technique?" Han Li was feeling rather curious about the weeping soul beast's abilities. The black-robed Han Li nodded before letting loose a sharp cry. All of a sudden, it tore apart the black robes as thick long fur sprouted all over its body. At the same, it swelled drastically in size, transforming into a massive black ape around 20 feet tall in the blink of an eye. Han Li raised his eyebrows upon seeing this. So its so-called transformation technique was just to switch back to its original form. Just as a hint of disappointment was welling up in Han Li's heart, the giant ape suddenly let loose a loud harumph as gusts of yin winds and countless arcs of black lightning were swept up around it. Immediately thereafter, its body expanded once again. The fur all over its body began to turn red as three twisted horns slowly sprouted from above its head. A bulge also appeared on its glabella, following which a crimson demonic eye emerged. At the same time, its face elongated, and its teeth turned into sharp fangs. It had transformed into a malicious spirit akin to the image on the weeping soul beast's back, except it appeared to be even more vicious. Furthermore, its massive body was around 60 to 70 feet tall and filled up the entire beast room. What came as even more of a surprise was that 3 black bone spikes had appeared on the weeping soul beast's back, each of which was around 10 feet in length. There was also black chi swirling around these spikes, and he could clearly recall that the malicious spirit in the pattern on the weeping soul beast's back didn't possess those spikes. However, the deity transformation stage ghostly monarch that the beast had devoured was able to manifest similar bone spikes with its hands. Could it be that the two were somehow connected? Just as Han Li was contemplating this notion, the weeping soul beast's body suddenly transformed into a dark cloud before shrinking to become a small black monkey. Immediately thereafter, it jumped onto the black cocoon, tearing it into pieces before feasting on it in large chunks. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this before a faint smile appeared on his face. It didn't take long for the little monkey to devour the entire massive cocoon, following which it let loose an elated cry and leaped onto Han Li's shoulder, settling there in an intimate manner. Han Li stroked the weeping soul beast's furry head before stowing it away into his spirit beast bracelet. After doing all that, he went to the nearby insect room to check on the gold-devouring beetles. These beetles had reached half a foot in length each, and he was very excited to see this. All of a sudden, he raised a hand, and azure light flashed as that small green vial appeared again. He looked at the vial for a short while, stroking it silently with his finger. Come to think of it, this mysterious little vial had become a lot more efficient here in the spirit realm. In the past, it had taken 7 days for it to produce a single drop of liquid, but that time had been shortened to 3 days in the spirit realm. What was most surprising to Han Li was that the phenomenon manifested from the creation of the liquid at night had also been minimized. In the past, as it basked in the moonlight, all types of strange phenomena would appear, but it only glowed with a faint white light under the moonlight now. Unless one was to inspect it from close quarters, it would be impossible to even identify the fact that it was glowing at all. Even if it didn't manage to catch someone's attention, they would only mistake it for a low-grade treasure anyway. And Li discovered this after he recovered his magic power. It was almost certain that the 7 moons in the spirit realm, as well as the increased abundance of spiritual qi here, were responsible for these changes. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D4 2B, letter 1D5 56, letter 1D5 F2, letter 1D6 0 4, letter 1D6 AT, letter 1D5 54, letter 1D5 60, letter 1D4 6. This was naturally good news for Han Li. Not only was he able to extract green liquid from the vial with increased regularity, it had also become more understated and nondescript. He could even use the small vial in public on some occasions and not be afraid of it being noticed by anyone. Han Li contemplated the situation for a short while before stowing away the small vial. He also stored the gold-devouring beetles and leopard Kirin beast into his spirit beast bracelet before exiting the cave abode. He knew that there were most likely people with their eyes on his plot of spirit land, so he naturally wasn't going to leave anything important behind in his cave abode. Moments later, a streak of azure light emerged from within the 5-colored mist, traveling toward Deep Heaven City. Several days later, the streak of light passed over a massive city wall that was several tens of feet tall, thus arriving in Deep Heaven City. On this occasion, Han Li was already familiar with this place, so he quickly arrived in front of the massive azure tower. There weren't that many cultivators making their way in and out of the tower at this point in time, and Han Li strode in a leisurely manner. According to what Zhao Wugui had told him, there was no hurry for him to go and report his plot of spirit land. Instead, he visited a place in the tower known as the Heavenly Armor Hall first, and was assigned a suit of dark azure armor. During his battle for the spirit land against the man with the Wang surname, his opponent had also worn a suit of this armor, and it was what had buffered the force of Han Li's punch in the concluding stages of their battle. He then sought out one of the black iron guards within the tower, and inquired about the whereabouts of the 56th squad in the 3rd team, and he headed directly over to that location. After a series of twists and turns, he finally stopped in front of a mundane-looking gate. Above the gate was a sign that read C56 in ancient text. Han Li looked at the shimmering white restriction on the gate before flipping over his palm, following which an azure jade pendant appeared in his hand. He waved the jade pendant toward the gate, following which a plume of azure light shot forth, and the white restriction on the gate was instantly dispelled. With his other hand, he gave the gate a casual push, and it opened up quite smoothly. He made his way through the gate and found himself in a spacious hall. There were some tables and chairs within the hall, as well as 2 passageways on either side of the hall, seemingly leading to someplace else. At this moment, there were 2 cultivators clad in suits of black armor seated next to one another, discussing something in quiet voices. Both of them immediately turned to Han Li with surprised expressions following his arrival. Han Li cast his gaze toward the 2 men, upon which he immediately raised his eyebrows. What a coincidence! One of the 2 men was none other than the green-eyed man, with the Zhuo surname who had taken Han Li to the Flying Spirit Palace. A hint of recognition appeared on his face at the sight of Han Li, following which he hurriedly rose to his feet and extended respectful bow. Greetings, Senior Han. Could it be that you're our new squad leader? Indeed, I've been assigned the role of leader of the 56th squad. I'll be in your care from now on. Han Li smiled as he tossed his jade pendant casually through the air. The man's heart jolted as he caught the jade pendant. He carefully inspected the jade pendant before returning it to Han Li in an even more respectful manner. Zhuo Chang of the 56th squad pays his respects to the squad leader. Seeing as Han Li's identity had been verified, the other man, who was a thin man that appeared to be in his 30s, also hurriedly rose to his feet. Dongguo Feng pays his respects to the squad leader. Han Li waved a hand to brush aside the formalities before asking, "Are you 2 the only ones here?" Aside from Taoist priest Ma and Fairy Su who aren't here, our other fellow Taoists are all meditating in the silent cultivation chamber. The 2 of us are here on patrol. Would you like me to alert everyone to your arrival, Senior? Zhu Chang asked. There's no need to disturb them. I've only just arrived in Deep Heaven City and I'm not too familiar with this place yet, so you can give me an introduction about our squad, Han Li replied with a smile. I'll be sure to tell you everything I know, Senior, Zhu Chang immediately vowed. During the following period of time, he introduced all of the members of their squad to Han Li, then also elaborated on the patrol missions assigned to their squad. Just as Han Li was listening to his introduction, a burst of golden light suddenly flashed before rushing into the hall, hurtling directly toward the three of them. Zhu Chang and Dong Yuofeng glanced at one another at the sight of the golden light, but neither of them did anything. In contrast, Han Li casually made a grabbing motion, and the golden light immediately fell into his grasp as a small golden sword, attached to which was a red jade slip. Before Han Li had a chance to extricate the jade slip, someone suddenly pushed open the gate of the hall from the outside. At the same time, the refined voice of a man sounded. He was that a messenger's sword from our higher-ups. Looks like I'm not too late after all. Huh, you're. A graceful Taoist priest strode into the hall before faltering at the sight of Han Li. Brother Ma, this is Senior Han. He's been assigned to be our squad leader, Zhu Chang hurried introduced. Senior Han. This junior pays his respects to Senior Han. A hint of surprise appeared on the Taoist priest's face as he hurried over to Han Li before extending a respectful salute. There's no need for formalities, fellow Taoist Ma. Looks like you've reached the pinnacle of the late nascent soul stage, which means you're only one step away from the deity transformation stage. That's very much worthy of celebration. Han Li carefully appraised the Taoist priest before a warm smile suddenly appeared on his face. You have a sharp, discerning eye, Senior Han. Unfortunately, I've been stuck at this cultivation base for several hundred years already. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to take that final step before my lifespan runs out, the Taoist priest replied with a wry smile. Han Li gave him a faint smile in response, and didn't say anything. He pulled the red jade slip off the small golden sword before examining its contents with his spiritual sense. The other three cultivators waited patiently off to the side. Moments later, Han Li withdrew his spiritual sense from the jade slip and uttered the name of a place. Floating Dawn Swamp. What? How could it be that place? Zhu Chang exclaimed upon hearing this. Dong Yuofeng and the Taoist priest were also shocked by this development. Why, is there something wrong with that place? Han Li asked with furrowed brows. That's an understatement. That place is regularly frequented by beings of other races, and many of our fellow Taoists perish there every year. It's an extremely perilous place, Zhu Chang explained in a grim voice. And we'll be the only squad patrolling this place, Han Li asked with a hint of surprise on his face. That most likely won't be the case. The Floating Dawn Swamp is an extremely massive place. Even if we fly non-stop, it'll still take us half a month to fly a lap around it. Generally speaking, there would be 4 or 5 squads patrolling the place at once, Taoist priest Ma explained. If we're not the only squad there, then we have nothing to complain about. We'll just need to take extra care, Han Li said in an indifferent voice. Senior Han, you won't be aware of this, but 2 years ago, Leader Chuan Guang of the 12th Squad was attacked by Shadow Tribe beings in the Floating Dawn Swamp, and he perished on the scene along with 2 of his companions. Senior Chuan Guang was already a mid-deity transformation cultivator at the time. Dong Yuofeng explained with a fearful expression. Is that so? Han Li's expression finally changed slightly upon hearing this. Right at this moment, the sound of footsteps rang out from the passageways on either side of the hall as a few more people emerged. Among them were 5 men and a woman, 2 of which were elderly men, 2 of which appeared to be a middle-aged couple, and the remaining 2 were a young man who appeared to be in his late teens, as well as a boisterous-looking burly man. These were clearly the squad members who had been meditating in the silent cultivation chambers, and they had emerged clearly because they had somehow been alerted to the arrival of the messenger's sword. All of them were naturally rather surprised to see Han Li before extending respectful bows toward him following introductions made by Zhu Chang. Han Li naturally responded politely in kind. After sweeping his spiritual sense through these squad members, he took an extra glance at the teenager, who introduced himself as bearing the Ying surname. This was at the pinnacle of the late nascent soul stage, just like Taoist priest Ma and Zhu Chang. Surprisingly, the 2 with the lowest cultivation bases were the pair of elderly men. After learning of the fact that they were being deployed to patrol the Floating Dawn Swamp, all of them also became quite concerned. All right, we can't change the order's issues by our higher-ups, so we'll just have to be more careful in the next few years. Let's set off tomorrow. Make sure you're all prepared for our journey by then. Han Li issued a few instructions before making his way into one of the passageways. He then found a silent cultivation chamber for himself and settled in there. Han Li's nonchalant reaction made all of the cultivators present even more concerned. Everyone turned to Zhu Chang in the end. The young man who appeared to be in his teens asked, "Brother Zhu, did you inform Senior Han of the perils of the floating dawn swamp?" "Of course I did, but it appears that he hasn't really taken me seriously." Zhu Chang heaved a faint sigh. "We have no choice in the matter anyway. The order was issued by the panel of elders. What are we going to do? Resist the orders?" the woman among them said in a resigned voice. "Obviously we can't resist the order, but we have to at least alert Senior Han to the perils of the swamp so he can treat the situation with more caution. If we really encounter those powerful beings from foreign races, we have to at least be prepared," Taoist priest Ma said with a concerned stroke of his beard. Yu Chang was silent for a moment before saying, "There's no need to be overly concerned, everyone. The floating dawn swamp is indeed quite a perilous place, but truly powerful beings from foreign races are still quite rare there. On top of that, due to how dangerous the swamp is, we'll receive a handsome reward for our efforts, and we'll be able to take a long rest after this patrol mission. As long as we can survive these next few years, we'll most likely be assigned to less dangerous areas thereafter." You've all heard what Senior Han said. Go back and make preparations for our journey tomorrow. No one else had anything meaningful to contribute to the discussion, so they could only depart amid a rather gloomy atmosphere. At this moment, Han Li was seated with his legs crossed within the silent cultivation chamber, and there was faint golden light shimmering all over his body. He appeared to be in deep meditation, but there were golden halos flashing erratically behind his head, creating a rather bizarre sight to behold. A day passed by in the blink of an eye. When Han Li opened his eyes again and emerged from the silent cultivation chamber, Zhu Chang and everyone else was already waiting there for him. All of them immediately rose to their feet and extended respectful salutes at the sight of Han Li. Han Li waved a hand before turning his gaze toward a beautiful female cultivator. This woman appeared to be in her 20s, and her pristine fair skin was almost translucent. Her eyes were shimmering like a pair of bright stars, and Han Li was struck by a sense of familiarity when he looked at her, as if he had seen her somewhere before. A hint of surprise flashed through Han Li's eyes upon making this observation. "Senior Han, this is Fairy Su. She's the direct lineal descendant of an ascended cultivator," Taoist priest Ma introduced with a smile. Han Li's heart stirred upon hearing this, but he merely nodded with a calm expression. The female cultivator also seemed to have a rather cold and aloof personality, and she only extended a clipped greeting toward Han Li before falling silent. "If everyone's here, then let's set off." Han Li didn't delay any longer as he led everyone out of the hall, heading directly toward a teleportation stone hall nearby. This hall was guarded by another group of cultivators, and there was a golden ark situated within the hall. But there was no need to make use of that treasure, seeing as the teleportation was only going to be over a relatively short distance. After handing over his identification badge for examination, their squad split up into groups of 3 or 4 to be teleported in separate bouts. Amid 3 successive flashes of white light, all 11 members of the squad were teleported out of Deep Heaven City and appeared in an unfamiliar place. After shaking off the rush of dizziness from teleportation, Han Li inspected his surroundings, and his brows furrowed slightly. They were situated within a small stone chamber with a one-way teleportation formation underfoot. There were all types runes carved into the walls, all of which were flickering and seemed to have been enshrouded under a restriction. Taoist priest Ma and the other cultivators that had been teleported to this place in advance were waiting for them outside of the formation. Han Li made his way out of the teleportation formation in an unhurried manner before striding toward the door of the stone chamber. He then pulled out his azure jade pendant and waved it at the door. A burst of azure light immediately shot forth, and the runes on the door flickered before it was slowly opened, revealing a passageway leading upward that was around 10 feet wide. Han Li immediately shot forth into the passageway as a streak of azure light. His 10 subordinates also hurriedly unleashed their movement techniques in pursuit. Not long after the final person left the stone chamber, spiritual light flashed from the door, and it slowly sealed shut again. Meanwhile, Han Li had already emerged from the passageway and was standing in the air above a small mountain, surveying his surroundings from his vantage point up above. They were currently situated within a set of bleak and barren mountain ranges. Around 50 kilometers behind them, a vast expanse of white light could be seen, beyond which lay a massive city wall. Even from such a long distance away, everyone could still see the astonishing spiritual light flashing from the runes on the city wall. And Lee appraised the city wall for a long time, with a contemplative look on his face. As far as he was aware, the wall of Deep Heaven City that was facing the primordial world had no gate. Any humans or demons wishing to access the city from this side had to do so through the teleportation formations within the city. With this arrangement, the restrictions placed on the city wall would prevent beings of foreign races from being able to infiltrate the city. However, Han Li wasn't interested in that. Instead, he turned his attention toward another direction. There, he was greeted by the sight of a string of lush mountains, all of different sizes. A scene of peacefulness and tranquility was portrayed, making it quite difficult to believe that the place was situated within the primordial world. According to the map, the so-called floating dawn swamp was around 5,000 kilometers away from this place. Due to the special terrain there, cultivators' spiritual sense were impaired, which made it the perfect place for spies from foreign races to survey Deep Heaven City from afar. As such, Deep Heaven City had no choice but to deploy groups of cultivators to regularly patrol the area. However, all of the spies from the foreign races were quite powerful and were especially proficient in concealment techniques. As such, many humans regularly fell prey to these beings and perished within the swamp. This was why it was regarded as one of the most dangerous areas to be assigned for patrol duties, and all cultivators on patrol duty prayed that they weren't assigned to this accursed place. However, Han Li had been deployed to this area, so he had to take extra care during the next few years. With that in mind, he glanced at the group of cultivators behind him as he instructed, "Let's go." Thus, their squad of 11 flew into the distance as streaks of light. A distance of just over 5,000 feet was certainly not difficult to cover for a group of cultivators at or above the nascent soul stage. As such, it didn't take long before Han Li caught sight of their destination in the distance. A turbulent green light appeared in his field of vision first. After drawing closer, Han Li managed to identify that this was not some green line. It was instead a vast expanse of murky mist. He slowed down slightly as he flipped over a hand, upon which a special formation plate appeared over his palm. Han Li pointed a finger at the formation plate, and a layer of red light immediately lit up over its surface. At this moment, all of the cultivators behind him also brought out identical formation plates and did the same thing. These formation plates were known as foreign spirit plates, and were treasures assigned to all cultivators from Deep Heaven City on patrol duty. The treasure could allow them to detect the presence of beings from foreign races within a certain distance. The limitation of this plate was that its detection effect was only applicable toward a single direction, but with so many plates summoned at once, all of which were focusing on different directions, they proved to be quite useful. Thus, Han Li and his group carried the formation plates in their hands as they slowed down and carefully ventured into the mist. Soon, all of them had disappeared. The floating dawn swamp was worthy of its ominous reputation. For some unknown reason, when they entered the swamp, Han Li's spiritual sense couldn't spread past 300 meters away. There wasn't much one could do to protect themselves from the illusory fog. But what was most troublesome was the strange, sharp worms lurking in the dripping sludge. These worms had centipede-like limbs and body, but countless slender, sharp mouths lined its body, all capable of spitting venom that can corrode magic treasures and devour a cultivator's protective light. If it were only one or two, they wouldn't have caught their attention, but these types traveled in groups. Ever since they entered the swamp sludge, tens of worms would simultaneously emerge, all of them about 3 meters long and capable of flight. Naturally, each time a group of them were disturbed, the squad would scramble to respond. If they weren't given a patrol assignment, they would have simply flown over the swamp so they didn't have to deal with the sharp worms. As a patrol squad, they needed to examine traces of foreign tribes, which was impossible to do if they flew high in the air. They were only able to fly at low altitudes. As such, worm attacks became commonplace, but there wasn't anything that could be done to prevent them. There was even one time when they disturbed a huge number of worms, provoking over 400 worms from the swamp. If it weren't for Han Li's divine essence-effused light, they would have swarmed the squad and inflict heavy losses. Instead, the light suspended the worms in midair where they were incinerated by spirit fire. Initially, they had doubts about Han Li's abilities since they hadn't seen him use them prior, but now, they felt far more at ease. Of course, the floating dawn swamp had other dangers than just the worms. There were the ancient silverhead beasts that were fond of concealing themselves in the dense jungle. They were able to separate their heads from their body and have their various body parts split, launching different attacks. Han Li found them difficult to deal with. Fortunately, the beasts' movements were slow and the area was difficult to traverse. So long as the squad flew out of their range, the beasts couldn't pursue them. As such, they weren't nearly as dangerous as the sharp worms. But soon, Han Li and the others came to have a deep understanding as to why the floating dawn swamp was the name the Grade 1 patrolled area. They had to maintain a heightened level of vigilance nearly the whole time. If they weren't careful, they could suffer injury. Under these circumstances, 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. The squad maintained their vigilance, but they didn't discover any traces of foreign tribes, much to the relief of those in the squad. The tense atmosphere in the squad eventually eased up. One day, a group of cultivators in the squad were holding the foreign spirit plates in their hand while flying for most of the day. Even high-grade cultivators couldn't help but tire from this. After all, one needed to remain vigilant on patrol and would cause much strain on their mind. At that moment, they arrived in front of a clear pond 300 meters wide. There was a small pile of rocks at the pond's side with a row of slender green bamboo growing from it. It was a refreshing scene one would find in a painting. Their spirits were roused. The large green-eyed man exchanged a glance with the others and he drew close to Han Li. He respectfully said, "Senior Han, this place seems quite good. How about we rest for a moment before we continue the patrol?" "That's fine, but be careful. First, take a look if there is anything strange," Han Li calmly said. On their assignment, Han Li rarely gave orders and was welcoming of the squad's proposals. This caused the distance between Han Li and the squad to unconsciously become closer. "Of course," the green-eyed man said with a smile. He then waved to the others behind him. 2 old men and the pair of women spread out quickly flying in the circle. With no reaction from the foreign spirit plate, they landed next to the scattered rocks near the pond with relief. They couldn't stay too long, so they simply found a clean area for themselves to sit and rest. As a deity transformation cultivator and someone who cultivated the great development arts, the patrol hadn't taken much strain on his mind. He hadn't joined them as a result, and simply took a leisurely stroll around the pond as he glanced around. The pond wasn't very deep, but its water was very clear. Inside the water swam a finger-sized silver fish that appeared harmless. Han Li frowned when he saw this and unconsciously raised his head and turned to look at the dozen stalks of bamboo. A few winds seemed to be blowing nearby, but they didn't cause much sound, adding to the serene atmosphere. The squad cultivators were sitting either at the edge of the water or next to the bamboo forest, all still. Han Li then turned his glance at the mirror-like surface of the water and muttered to himself for a moment. His eyes became narrow for just a moment. He slowly turned around and lifted his leg in the direction of the bamboo forest. But in that brief instant, Han Li flicked his fingers hidden inside his sleeves. Red lights flashed and 10 red lines sank into the ground. This all occurred silently and without a trace. When Han Li slowly walked towards the bamboo forest, he stopped in front of it and looked at it with a calm gaze. This action seemed somewhat bizarre. The youth surnamed Yin and the woman surnamed Su couldn't help but open their eyes when they detected this strange action and gave each other a strange glance. However, Han Li ignored them and his gaze soon became ice cold. He opened his mouth. A golden light shot out and chopped through the green forest in a crack of lightning. Then with a crack, a bowl-thick stalk of green bamboo was split through the middle. "Ye," the youth surnamed Yin yelped in shock. Fairy Su also looked with wide eyes. But before they could process what happened, an incomprehensible scene occurred. A fountain of dark green liquid spouted from the opening of the split bamboo, spreading an incredibly fishy smell in the air. What was even more astonishing was how the earth rumbled at nearly the same time. A painful roar shook the ground and the green bamboo trembled, turning into thick hair-like tentacles and fiercely striking at Han Li. As if he could allow such a simple attack to hit him, he disappeared in a blur and appeared above the water, coldly looking down at dancing tentacles that attacked him. The cultivators that were resting nearby were startled by this sudden change and soared into the air in panic. They even released several of their bladed weapons to strike the tentacles. When they saw that Han Li chopped off one of the tentacles, they unconsciously took the action lightly. However, they wholly didn't expect for the tentacle to give a strange metallic clang upon impact. easily repelling the weapons. In the astonishment of the other cultivators, they also thought to attack when the gray stones at the side of the pond suddenly turned black. The scattered stones twisted together to form skull-sized black scales. They belonged to a huge ancient beast. The beast appeared round, but one wasn't able to see its nose or mouth. However, there were thin tentacles on its back that were over 30 meters long. It seemed to be lying hidden next to the pond. The bamboo was a transformation of its flesh. Cultivators seemed to have been resting on the surface of the beast. It had used some sort of unknown ability to conceal itself not only from their spiritual sense, but also from their foreign spirit plate. "Attack!" Hanley shouted from the air. The cultivators felt their hearts tremble, and they immediately released their treasures. For a time, various colored lights shined in the air and engulfed the huge beast in a torrent. The ancient beast had no intention to flee. Rather, the tentacles on its back hurriedly danced, turning into a gray blurs of light, blocking the attacks on its body. Whenever a tentacle blocked an attack, a rumbling explosion sounded, and it fiercely blocked the magic treasure. Regardless of where the treasure struck, they were bluntly repelled, preventing any attack from striking at its true body. The youth surnamed Ying coldly snorted, clapped his hands together, and raised them. A ball of red and yellow light appeared in each hand, suddenly releasing a hail of fist-sized lightning fireballs upon the beast's face. As for Fairy Sue, a cold silver light glowed from her body and wildly flashed, producing countless ice-attributed balls of lightning. The two types of lightning flame seemed to merge and created astonishing momentum. A deafening boom resulted, creating blinding lightning, completely enveloping most of the beast. When the others saw this, they couldn't help but smile. At that moment, Han Li had yet to take action and was merely observing his subordinates' attacks. HMPH, a bone-chilling snort sounded from the direction of the lightning fireballs. An otherworldly wind suddenly blew from underneath them. The wind was hazy and shook, circling itself a few times before stirring up a tornado. It completely swept up the lightning fireballs. A series of explosions could be heard within the tornado, resulting in both the tornado and lightning flames disappearing. Youth Ying and Fairy Sue were both greatly alarmed. The others also appeared deeply shocked. A strange person appeared on top of the huge beast. The person had green flesh of some unknown hide. It had no clothes, a bald head and nostrils, but its eyes lacked any emotion. But what was more strange was that the legs underneath his thighs merged with the huge beast as if they were one and the same. "A savage beastman, quickly kill him. We cannot allow him to join with the beast." When they saw this strange person, Taoist priest man shouted in terror. When the others heard this, they were aghast. Without another thought, they released rarely seen ancient treasures in streaks of light. In a moment, the beastman and the ancient beast was pelted by attacks. And Li saw that his subordinates were truly fearful of this foreign tribe. To the confusion of the cultivators in the squad, Han Li still hadn't taken action. As the beastman was on the verge of transformation, he continued to float in the air with his hands behind the back, leaving the fight completely to them. As the cultivators felt somewhat stressed, the beastman suddenly counterattacked, blocking them from asking Han Li. The beastman let out a strange laugh and its shoulder blurred, creating a yellow tornado in the direction of the cultivators. As for the ancient beast, its body began to turn exceptionally green, soon extended its tentacles. They spread out in green blurs, striking at the air along with the tornado. Regardless of the magic treasure's attacks, be they lightning, flame, or swordlight, they were all swept into the tornado and disappeared. And when they were struck by the tentacles, they were repelled. The cultivators acted in a panic, unable to cope with what was happening. As Han Li looked on without lifting a finger, no one noticed the small silver fish in the pond had begun to form two orbs. They sparkled with silver light as if it in the form of silver eyes. Meanwhile, the calm surface of the water began to violently stir, exposing a transparent 10-meter-large mouth. It had crystalline ice-like fangs. The pond had turned into a monster with a transparent body. At that moment, the huge transparent monster stirred and pounced at Han Li in midair. Not only was it transparent, but its movements were silent as if it were formless. Han Li silently looked at the battle that was unfolding between the beastmen, as if he hadn't noticed himself being attacked. Just as the transparent beast was 10 meters away from Han Li, its silver eyes flashed, and it bared its fangs at Han Li. Gray light flashed from Han Li's back, and countless thin lines of divine, essence-effused light directly shot at it. Alarmed, the huge beast thought to dodge, but it was too late. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D6 9B, letter 1D5 5 6, letter 1D6 8, letter 1D5 6 8, letter 1D5 F2. Letter 1D4 1C, letter 1D5 FC, letter 1D5 FA. With the sound of pattering rain, the gray lines pierced through the huge beast's body and twisted, firmly wrapped around the beast's body. Han Li's body then blurred, turning to the huge beast. With a brief glance, he opened his mouth and spat out a small black mountain. It twirled in the air, surging several times in size until it was a 300-meter tall mountain above the transparent beast. The beast knew things were far from good, and it promptly shook its body violently in an attempt to escape. Unfortunately, it was a water-attributed beast. With a body of the 5 elements, it couldn't hope to escape the bindings of the divine essence-effused light. The gray line simply swayed a bit and tightened. At last, Han Li uttered an incantation. A roiling sound filled the air and the mountain dropped, crushing the transparent beast underneath. The impact vibrated the air. The mountain crushed the transparent beast into the earth, ensuring it was entirely trapped. He then took an expressionless look at the beast. However, a loud scream from behind him caught his attention, and he slowly turned around with a frown. The cultivators were still busy in their battle with the beastmen, but when the beastmen saw the transparent monster restrained by Han Li, it let out a panicked roar. The beastman no longer controlled the tornado or tangled with the green-eyed man. Instead, he slapped the beast below him and quickly sank inside the giant beast. Not good, he's about to merge with it. Quickly stop him. The large green-eyed man rejoiced at seeing Han Li silently restrain the other beast, but his face grew tense at seeing what the beastman had done. Youth Ying and the others were all alarmed and poured as much of their spiritual power into their treasures as they could, doubling all their efforts into attacking. But even without direction, the tornado still hindered their attacks for a time. In that delay, the skin of the huge beast shined with green light and bumps appeared on the surface of its body. First a pair of legs, then hands appeared. Finally, its body lengthened and a bald head grew. Under the control of the beastman, the huge beast turned into a black giant that was 100 meters tall. Its body was covered in purple-black scales, and it had ominous green lanterns for eyes. When it appeared, it wordlessly raised its hand into the air and fiercely pounded down with black light flashing from its fist. Booms thundered, and a dozen magic treasures were crushed into dust. A majority of them, however, managed to escape high into the air with a wail. Fairy Sue raised her brow and snorted. Only she deemed to continue her attack and pointed at her snow-white flying sword. Letting out a keen ring, it turned 10 meters long and blurred, instantly disappearing. In the following moment, it reappeared 20 meters above the giant and fiercely chopped down. She actually planned on beheading the giant in a lone effort. But greatly against her expectations, the giant was incredibly fast despite its huge size. As soon as the sword moved, it opened its mouth and blew back the sword with a gale. Soon, it firmly grabbed a hold of the sword with its black-purple hand. A malevolent expression appeared on the giant's face as it pressed its other palm against the sword. It appeared to want to destroy the flying sword. Fairy Sue's face turned pale. The sword was her personally bonded magic treasure. If it was destroyed, she would suffer backlash from her mental bond with it. She was executing spell seals in utmost haste to free it, but despite its violent trembling and the series of white icy chi, the giant kept its grip steady. The giant took a deep breath. Just as it was about to press down, space fluctuated nearby. A dense beam of black light struck the giant's chest. In a baffling display, the attack seemed trivially small compared to its giant body, but its tumble several steps back. The black beam of light only appeared for an instant, and from where it appeared followed a silver flame bird. The fist-sized bird dived at the giant with its wings spread. Again, the difference in size was incredible, but it stepped back with a fearful expression upon seeing it. Rather than standing firm, it immediately turned around in a mad run. The giant only took 2 steps before a sharp wind sounded from below the nearby ground. A dozen red threads flew out and surrounded the giant's step. Red light glowed, turning into dense flaming ropes holding down the giant's legs. No longer able to move forward, the giant swiped down in furious alarm, wanting to break the flame ropes. The silver flame bird never gave it the chance. It swooped forward at lightning speed and struck the giant's back as a ball of silver flames. A muffled crackle snapped, and silver fire spread as the giant was covered in oil. It spread quickly and lit it ablaze. Yet unable to free itself, the giant could only scream in pain and swept yellow winds around itself, trying to extinguish the flames. When yellow wind and silver flames touched one another, the wind itself seemed to be lit up. In only a few short breaths, the giant was thoroughly enveloped by both flames and ignited winds. Soon, the screams stopped and the giant fell onto the ground. The body had been burned to a crisp, leaving no trace of the giant's existence. The black beam of light had unexpectedly appeared afterwards and arrived where the giant once was. The entire scene was witnessed by the squad of cultivators. Although Hanli already used his spirit-devouring flames once before on the sharpworms, it hadn't been in a display as fearsome as this. Now that the cultivators had seen it used on the helpless beastmen, they were all mesmerized with disbelief on their faces. At that moment, Hanli blurred, arriving above the silver flames and beckoning to it. The silver flames suddenly condensed into a ball and returned back to him in the form of a firebird. As for the fire ropes, they returned into his sleeve in red threads. Hanli swept his sights to the transparent beast being suppressed by the divine essence-effused mountain, and said, "Take back the savage beastman and have the foreign spirit hall deal with it when we go back to the city." "Yes, Junior Ma will immediately retrieve it." The heart of the large, green-eyed man trembled, and he acknowledged the command. Then, with a flip of his hand, he released a white gourd. The gourd was inscribed with large quantities of silver runes. It is a specially refined magic tool meant for temporarily detaining foreign beings. Regardless of the tribe of their many abilities, so long as they aren't at true spirit grade, they can be captured by the gourd. Of course, the beastman had now lost its strength and was completely motionless. It no longer put up a resistance. When the green-eyed man arrived near the essence-effused mountain, he held out the gourd to the transparent beast underneath. With a light toss, the gourd spouted out a silver mist in midair, and the mist circled around the huge mountain. It suddenly turned into giant silver characters, entering the body of the huge beast in an instant. As silver light enveloped the entire monster, its figure quickly shrunk to the size of a fist. But strangely enough, the essence-effused mountain shrunk at the same speed as the transparent beast, denying the beast any chance of escape. The gourd then released another wave of silver mist that enveloped the shrunken beast. Meanwhile, Hanli pointed from far away, and the small black mountain slowly rose into the air, allowing the beast to be absorbed in the gourd. The green-eyed man hastily put a lid on the gourd and stuck a golden talisman on top of it, finally letting out a sigh of relief. The others had already withdrawn their magic tools and landed on the ground, but when they looked at Hanli, it was with newfound respect. The recent battle clearly displayed that their squad leader possessed unfathomably profound abilities. He was by no means an ordinary deity transformation stage cultivator. While they were overjoyed by this, they also felt a degree of awe. Take another moment to rest before we continue. Having taken the mountain back into his sleeve, he simply gave the squad a short word. He walked aloofly to the side and sat down with his eyes closed. Naturally, none of the others raised any objections. They all spread out and took a moment of rest to recover their magic power. Fairy Sue, however, remained standing. After some brief hesitation, she walked over to Hanli and curtsied. "Many thanks for Senior's assistance. My ice crystal sword would have been destroyed otherwise." Hanli opened his eyes and gave the woman a probing glance. "An ice crystal sword. You must have refined it from myriad-year profound jade." Fairy Sue's heart trembled. "Senior has great wisdom. The primary material in my sword refinement is profound jade." Hanli slowly asked with a flicker of his eye, "Since you use a sword of extreme cold, your cultivation art must also be ice-attributed. Can I ask if you know a person?" "Please go ahead, Senior." After a brief pause, Fairy Sue immediately agreed. Hanli stared at her twinkling iris and continued in sound transmission. "There was an ancient cultivator by the name of Fairy Ice Soul. She was an ascended cultivator who practiced techniques of extreme cold. Do you know this person?" When he looked at the woman, he felt an air of familiarity. Upon closer inspection, he found that her eyes appeared to be the same as Fairy Ice Soul's image during the opening of the Spirit Void Hall in the North Night Palace. There was a striking resemblance. Although it was only an image, Fairy Ice Soul's irises were flowing with light like twinkling stars. The remarkable sight had left a deep impression on his memory. Now that he saw the woman cultivated ice-attributed techniques and used a treasure refined from profound jade, he decided to ask her out of curiosity. "Fairy Ice Soul, that was a deceased ancestor of my Sioux clan. Did Senior know her? Could it be Senior also came from the same lower realm?" Fairy Sue quickly replied in voice transmission with complete shock. "He, I definitely didn't know her, but I did benefit from what she left behind in my lower realm. Brushing the rest off with a laugh, he asked, Why isn't your flying sword completely refined from myriad-year profound jade? Its magic power would have been raised by at least another half." Shocked at Han Li's connection with her ancestor, she soon recovered and replied, "Senior must be joking. The myriad-year profound jade might not be as valuable as the top-grade materials found in the wildlands, but it is still very difficult to collect. The profound jade in my flying sword was all purchased at extravagant cost." And Li ran through his thoughts and said, "So that's the case. I happen to have some myriad-year profound jade on hand. It's enough for you to fully refine the flying sword. Since Fairy Sue has a connection to Fairy Eye Soul, I'll give it to you. This can be considered as returning the favor." He swiped his hand through his storage bracelet and summoned a foot-long jade box into his hand before handing it over to her. "Many thanks, Senior." The woman appeared overjoyed and hastily uttered thanks, and when she opened the box she gasped. There were 4 fist-sized lumps of white rock, each emitting a white glacial light. Not only was it enough profound jade to refine the flying sword, there was enough to craft a magic treasure as well. A fiery gaze flashed through the woman's eyes, and she gave Han Li a deep salute after putting away the box. Han Li waved his arm in a casual manner and resumed meditation. Be it the heaven-void cauldron, the glacial quintessence, or the glacial flames, they all seem to be largely related to Fairy Ice Soul. Since he acquired much benefit from them in the past, helping out one of her descendants have relieved him of this debt, leaving him with less to worry about the next time he faces his inner demons. Having acquired this valuable treasure, she tactfully ceased bothering Han Li and quietly departed. The others naturally took notice of Han Li's actions with the woman from afar. Seeing her obvious delight at the jade box, a large departure from her usually collected attitude, many grew curious, but none were so foolish as to directly ask them. About 6 hours later, Han Li gave the command and they set off. For the rest of their journey, they didn't discover any other foreign tribes. Having finished their patrol route, they arrived at a predetermined point and awaited the arrival of a gold court boat. The squad was then taken back to Deep Heaven City in 2 waves. In their encounter, they captured a beast that was tamed by the savage beastmen. When they handed it over to the foreign spirit hall, they acquired a significant reward. According to the rules, there was a half-year of rest after each patrol, and they finished their patrol assignment after a 10-year period. Afterwards, the patrol area and route would change. Because Han Li finished the patrol on his own for the first time, he was awarded an earth-cleansing pill and he promptly took it. Soon after, the small squad arrived back at the hall and separated. The cultivators all bid their farewells to Han Li before taking off. Just as Fairy Sue was about to depart, she said, "Senior Han, in 2 days, there will be a triannual auction for items found from the wilderness. You might want to take a look at it." Han Li raised his brow and asked, "Items from the wilderness, are you interested in it too?" Senior must be joking. One must be at deity transformation stage in order to participate. As I am only a trifling nascent soul cultivator, I don't qualify. In addition, each item is bid at extraordinary prices. They aren't something I can hope to afford. Perhaps you might find some luck," she said with a wry laugh. "Thanks for telling me, fellow Taoist. I'll be sure to take a look," Han Li said with a neutral tone. Seeing that Han Li received her friendly tip, she respectfully bid farewell. Han Li glanced at her back and unconsciously narrowed his eyes. In truth, even if the woman hadn't mentioned there was an auction, he had no intention of immediately leaving the city. Ever since he arrived in the spirit realm, he didn't have an opportunity to acquire suitable pill formulas and medicines. He originally planned on doing so after he finished the patrol. Now that there was an auction happening, he may as well take a look along the way. After all, he already knew of the inconceivable reputations about items from the wilderness. With that in mind, Han Li calmly departed from the huge stone pagoda and flew to the location of the market as noted on his map. The Deep Heaven City market was extremely large. It had about every rare material from the 3 human realms and 7 demon lands. The occasional appearance of wilderness items aroused even more activity. Both city guards and outsiders freely wandered the markets. But what was most astonishing was the huge light barrier that separated human and demon clans, splitting them into 2 areas. At the very heart of the city, there was a huge hall that led to an area where both humans and demons could trade materials or wilderness items. After all, there were items that weren't useful to either humans or demons, but were possibly valuable to the other side. As for the auction, that would take place at a side chamber in the hall. In a streak, Han Li landed in a street in the market, next to a medicine shop, and casually walked in. "Senior, what are you looking for? Although my shop may be small, I have many medicines." The shop wasn't large. There were a core formation stage middle-aged shopkeeper and 2 foundation establishment servants. There were no other guests. When they saw Han Li walk inside with his dark azure armor, the shopkeeper smiled and personally stood up to welcome them. "Are there any pill formulas and spirit medicines that can progress one's cultivation?" Han Li bluntly asked. "For a deity transformation cultivator, I have 2 pill formulas, but many of the required materials are too precious to be held in my store." When the shopkeeper heard there was business, his spirits were roused. Han Li frowned and said, "Oh, then go ahead and take out the pill formulas. I'll take a look." "Yes, please wait a moment, Senior. I'll have it right out," the shopkeeper respectfully said. He then gave the order to a servant and hastily gave Han Li a seat with tea. Then he headed into the back of the shop. Han Li rejoiced at being able his wanted items with ease. He sat in a simple bamboo chair and sipped on some spirit tea in a leisurely manner. A while later, the middle-aged shopkeeper came back with a storage bracelet. When he arrived in front of Han Li, he swiped his hand past the storage bracelet and took out a white and a blue jade slip. He then took out a large assortment of boxes and bottles, placing them on the side of the table. Then he respectfully stood there and waited. Han Li swept his gaze and summoned the 2 jade slips into his hand before immersing his spiritual sense into them. "The clear jade pill and the true toad liquid," Han Li muttered to himself. He frowned and withdrew his spiritual sense. The clear jade pill was acceptable. It used rare medicinal herbs, some of which he hadn't heard before. A majority of the herbs had to be at 2,000 or 3,000 years of maturity, but they were considered quite common. As for the true toad liquid, it was rather odd. The liquid's primary ingredient was the spirit blood of an ancient beast in the wilderness called the green-eyed toad. It had common supplementary ingredients. While both could be used by deity transformation stage cultivators, the clear jade pill was only useful to early deity transformation stage cultivators. It had diminished results in mid-stage cultivators. The true toad liquid is much stronger, but was more suited for late deity transformation stage cultivators. If used at mid-stage, the overbearing medicinal power could pose a great risk. With his eyes shut, he began to think about the medicine's usage, refinement, and portioning. Then he opened his eyes and examined the boxes and medicines on the table. As the middle-aged shopkeeper said, he lacked about half of the materials required for the medicines. The toad's spirit blood obviously wasn't there. Han Li stroked his chin and asked, "Are the missing ingredients something I can purchase at other shops? Since the true blue-eyed toad is an ancient beast from the wilderness, it should be difficult to find." The required materials for the clear jade pill doesn't really need medicines of the right maturation. It can be refined even with plants of lesser age, but its effects will be lacking. They can be acquired so long as Senior has enough spirit stones. As for the toad's spirit blood, it is a truly rare material. Although it will go on sale occasionally, it will be immediately bought. They are one of the most in-demand materials for large medicine stores. It won't be easy for Senior to acquire this item. However, there will soon be an auction where it might be sold. So it was like that. "I want those items." After some consideration, Han Li nodded. "Many thanks for your business, Senior. I will give you the bill. 2 pill formulas is 100,000 spirit stones. The 3 stalks of 5,000-year-old gold herb is." With a smile, the shopkeeper hastily spoke and began to list out the prices of the items on the table. Han Li simply narrowed his eyes as he listened, betraying nothing from his face. After the time it took to finish a cup of tea, Han Li calmly left the medicine store and entered another store nearby. As such, he began a stroll through all the medicine shops nearby, as if planning to visit all the medicine shops on the street. In other medicine stores, Han Li gathered together 8 other useful pill formulas, but they required materials that were even harder to obtain than the spirit blood of the true blue-eyed toad. Han Li had no choice but to put them off. So long as he could acquire the required materials for these medicines, he would spare no money. However, he wouldn't gather extremely expensive materials, but seeds or young stalks. This way, Han Li could acquire large quantities of materials without bankrupting himself. As a result, he acquired all the medicinal herbs he required for the clear jade pill and more. After he matured the herbs using the spirit liquid, he'd be able to start refining the pills. Of course, it wasn't easy to refine medicine that could be used by deity transformation stage cultivators. With his attainments in pill refinement, he may need to take multiple attempts to make a pill. With Han Li's small bottle, he had unlimited attempts, so he had nothing to worry about. As for the true toad liquid, it was something he required. He would have to purchase it in the coming auction. Han Li felt somewhat apprehensive. But before the auction, he would need to acquire more spirit stones. He was currently lacking them, so he would have to trade for more. In the spirit realm, spirit stones were abundant, causing the price of items to be several times more than in the mortal realm. Of course, even with more spirit stones in the mortal realm, it would still be impossible to acquire the ingredients needed for deity transformation stage pills. And Li was confident that with enough medicine pills, he would be able to advance a grade without a problem. Having come to that conclusion, he quietly entered an empty corner of a street. He looked around him to see that no one was looking, and a series of cracks sounded from his body. He shortly transformed into a large man with a purple face. Afterwards, Han Li strut into a large store by the name of the Revival Hall. In the markets of the spirit realm, thousand-year spirit medicines weren't as rare as in the mortal realm. But when Han Li presented several stalks of medicine at 8,000 years of maturation, the shopkeeper exchanged them for an astronomical sum of spirit stones without any hesitation. Han Li grabbed the spirit stones and nimbly departed. He didn't stay in one place for long in order to avoid attention. Han Li didn't depart from the city. Instead, he walked past several streets and took note of the various magic tools, treasures, materials, and talismans that were on sale. As a result, he had gained much experience. It was clear the spirit realm was filled with abundant materials. The quality and might of treasures here far exceeded that in the mortal realm. Even larger stores had fantastical spirit treasures on sale. As for talismans and secret seals, they were even more fantastical, much to Han Li's surprise. They were beyond the mortal world's talismans. There were several talismans among them that were written in silver runes. The majority of these talismans were either assistive or defensive, with hardly any offensive types among them. The few he saw held astonishing prices, but there were talismans with a silver silhouette that caught his interest. Han Li asked all the store owners about it and came to know that they all came from the heaven spirit region. These silver rune talismans were puppet talismans. One can summon the puppet phantom that is inscribed in the talisman. Its abilities and might depend on the refinement quality and the skill of its user. It was said that the finest puppet talismans could even mimic the cultivation and techniques of its user. It was a rather practical talisman. After he was finished, his heart stirred and he couldn't help but think of the damaged Jade book remnants in his possession. The talisman attainments it detailed also mentioned the refinement method for a puppet talisman, but he hadn't researched it. As the selling cost of these talismans was incredible, he'd have to take a proper look at them. With that in mind, Han Li bluntly looked for 2 talisman stores and picked up the materials he needed to refine silver rune talismans in large quantity. With that done, Han Li leisurely made his way to the auction site, the profound Zenith Hall where human and demons mixed. Although the auction was still 2 days away, he wanted to take a look at what the demons were trading. After all, Demon Clan hadn't participated in human auctions. In order to prevent any clashes from occurring in the hall in the middle of business, human cultivators that wanted to trade needed to carry a palm-sized jade pendant. So long as the jade pendant was on their body, it would immediately conceal them in a white mist and would also restrict the user's cultivation. In addition, if anyone in the hall used their magic power, the grand formation in the hall would not only restrict their abilities, but it would also teleport them outside. They wouldn't be able to enter for a short time. The Demon Clan's side had a black banner that hid their appearance in a demon cloud as well. In addition, there were 4 spatial tempering stage gold guards from both races standing at guard. There were also 10 dark azure guards preserving order on either side. Such power naturally prevented anything unwanted from occurring. In order to enter, Han Li had to pay a large number of spirit stones. He took a jade pendant from the guard and put it on his waist, producing a white mist around them. Then he walked down a long corridor and through a large gate. As a result, he arrived in a large hall over a kilometer long with an exact door on the other side. There were over 100 white and black balls of mist in the hall, each representing a human or demon. There were 30 of them sitting cross-legged on the ground with several items laid out in front of them. They were all silent. Most people stood by the vendor stalls, carefully examined items, or had quiet discussions with the vendors. There were also blurs occasionally spotted in the hall. From time to time, people who hide in a corner and have their secret discussions there. Han Li stood in place and looked at his surroundings. He then wordlessly walked over to a nearby vendor's booth. The vendor was hidden in a silver mist, showing he was human. Placed in front of him were two odd items. One of them was a faint green and resembled a branch. The other was a sparkling crimson stone about the size of a fist. Han Li curiously examined the items on display and swept his spiritual sense past them. The branch had extremely thin wood spiritual qi, but it also possessed an intense lightning-attributed power as if it was formed from lightning. He was astonished by its existence. This immediately reminded him of the heaven-lightning bamboo. But even 10,000-year-old golden lightning bamboo didn't possess such fearsome lightning power. Its divine devil-bane lightning is usually well restrained. As for the crimson gem, it let out a fishy scent as if it were the inner core of a beast, but he couldn't tell its origins. Han Li looked at this with some interest, but after a moment more, he quietly left to another vendor's booth. He then arrived at Demon Vendor with head-sized chunks of black ore that gave off a chill. Han Li slowly paced through the hall and looked at what was on display. He would occasionally stop and take a close look. From start to finish, he hadn't said a word, as if he were ignoring the vendors entirely. Han Li quickly looked through all the items on display, but he found himself somewhat disappointed. Although all the items were rare enough, there was nothing that truly tempted him. Although these items have come from the wilderness, there were unfamiliar items and would only be useful to an odd few. Han Li swept his gaze around. Just as he thought about whether he should leave the hall, he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. The white mist around him blurred and he suddenly turned around. The footsteps then came to a stop, as if in surprise of Han Li's quick reaction. The person was a demon cultivator, as they were covered in black qi. They had a slim body and was examining Han Li. They were both hidden by secret techniques. Apart from a faint silhouette, nothing could be made out. "Is there anything you want from me?" Han Li calmly asked. "Did you not find any suitable items, fellow Taoist?" A pleasant female voice spoke from the black cloud. "Yes, I haven't found anything that caught my interest. Why did you ask me that?" "It appears this is your first time at the profound Zenith Hall. In truth, apart from what is put on display, the truly good items are found in private exchanges," the woman calmly said. "So it was like that. But wouldn't it be easier to find a suitable customer if one showed it in the open?" Han Li said with a frown. "So you don't know, fellow Taoist, or you're being deliberately dense. Even with the concealment pendants and banners, it is still easy to tell one apart. Furthermore, some items are quite provocative, so it isn't best to have too many people know about it. All right, that's enough for now. Do you have any items you wish to trade?" The woman's impatience seemed to grow colder out of impatience. "So long as you have good items, I am willing to trade. However, I must ask, why did you seek me out?" Han Li said. "It's rather simple," the woman said with an indifferent tone. "I was able to tell that you were most likely someone new to Deep Heaven City when you were closely examining the vendor items. Although our cultivation is restricted, I can tell on closer inspection that you are most likely a deity transformation stage cultivator. You are a suitable person to trade with me, and you weren't the first person that I sought out. Tell me what you have that is suitable for a demon." "Apart from a few of my own items, I've also been entrusted to several items by my comrades. That's why you take out all your good things." When Han Li heard this, he smiled. "I do have a few things that are suitable for demons, but can I take a look at your things first?" "HMPH," the woman coldly chuckled. "I have spirit medicines materials, a few human magic treasures, and ancient treasures. What do you want?" Han Li's eyes wandered for a bit and he asked, "I don't need any finished goods, but I am interested in materials. Do you have any true toad spirit blood? I require it." The woman paused and immediately shook her head. "True toad spirit blood. You sure know how to pick them. True toad liquid is not only useful to humans but demons as well. No one would be selling it in the profound Zenith Hall. If that's the case, then do you have any 5,000-year-old gold grass in?" Han Li didn't pay any mind to the woman's mocking tone and promptly listed other materials that he lacked from his pill formulas. When she heard Han Li, her face turned unsightly. When Han Li was finished, she gloomily said, "Don't delude yourself. Those materials are for cultivation progression pills. They are all found in the wilderness, so our demon clan is lacking them as well. We definitely wouldn't be trading those to humans." Han Li wasn't disappointed by her words and calmly proposed, "There is no need to be anxious. I don't even need the right year of the herbs. Saplings and seeds will do as well. I am even willing to trade at cost." After some hesitation, the woman said with a doubtful tone, "In that case, it could be possible, but it is also troublesome as I don't have any of those right now. Let me see what you have. So long as you can gather them together, I will trade with you the next time I am here," Han Li said with a happy tone. "Yes, but this is something that I must take a look at first. Even if seeds and saplings are commonly scarce when few people wish to buy them, but in case I do find them, what will you be giving to me? I won't be considering spirit stones, even high-grade ones," the woman said with an arrogant tone. When Han Li heard this, he sent her a voice transmission with a calm expression. "What, you actually have 10,000-year-old spirit herbs?" The woman trembled inside the fog, and she spoke with delight. Han Li smiled and said, "So long as you can find the items I require, I will give them to you." After her delight passed, doubts filled her mind. "Why don't you make medicine pills with those herbs? Why do you want to trade with me? Please don't ask too much about my circumstances. If you feel that it is suitable, please do your utmost to gather those materials. The next time I come here, I will trade with you. Consider this one to be a down payment." Han Li soon swiped his hand over his storage bracelet and took out a half-foot-long wooden case and casually handed it over to her. The woman in the black chi was startled and unconsciously reached out for it. Her expression wavered, and she quickly brushed her spiritual sense past the gap in the wooden box. She yelped and took a long look at the item in the box. Then she slowly opened the lid, and her expression turned solemn. "Are you truly planning to use this as a down payment? Don't you fear that I will take it and won't return?" the woman coldly said. "This is a trifling 3,000-year-old herb. With your status, you aren't going to do something like that. Additionally, this is a display of sincerity to guarantee your business. So long as you bring those medicine herbs to me, I'll definitely leave you satisfied," he said with a neutral tone. She flipped her hand and put away the box. Then she confidently said, "It seems you are sincere about the deal, but items you want can't be gathered in a short amount of time. I will need several years to gather the 3 medicines." "Good, I await good news." Pleased, Han Li saluted her. To him, a medicine herb of several thousand years wasn't valuable. It was a cheap price to gain her trust. Furthermore, Han Li was confident that his promise of a 10,000-year-old medicine herb was enough to have her find his items. Since Han Li was unwilling to attract too much attention to the human side of the city, this was a suitable method. The woman nodded and wordlessly left. Han Li narrowed his eyes to look at the slender silhouette through the black mist. Suddenly, he began to walk to the exit on the human side. But when he walked past the first human vendor, his eyes were drawn onto the branch once more and he unconsciously stopped. After some hesitation, he walked over. "Could you tell me about the origins of this item?" Han Li walked over to the vendor and reached out for the green branch. He then stroked it with his finger. "The origin? I saw heavenly lightning strike dried spirit wood. Afterwards it grew alive and turned into this spirit wood. I don't know anything about its origins or usage." A hoarse, aged voice spoke from the white mist. Han Li flipped the branch several times and muttered, "Heavenly lightning turned wood. How surprising." "Hee, rare indeed," the old man chuckled. "However, I won't hide this from you. This item contains potent lightning power. Even if you forcefully refine it, you won't be able to use it for tool refinement. I wanted to see if the demons were interested, but it seems you are too." "Oh, it's nothing much. I just cultivated a bit of lightning, so I'm curious about this item." Han Li fiddled with the lightning branch and calmly asked, "What did you plan on trading this for?" When the old man heard that Han Li thought about purchasing it, the old man was startled and gave Han Li an appraising glance. He hoarsely said, "I have yet to find a true use for the lightning wood, so its price is hard to estimate, but it is lightning-turned wood. How about this? Recently, I've wanted to refine a sky essence pill, but I'm missing a 5,000-year-old medicine herb. If you can give it to me, the wood is yours. Of course, I won't refuse top-grade spirit stones if you have them." "How did you know I have medicine herbs?" Han Li's heart trembled and his expression behind the white mist sank. "There is no need to be shocked," the old man softly said. "I've cultivated a minor ability that grants me an extraordinary scent of smell. During your trade with the demon woman, I caught a whiff of a medicinal scent coming from that wooden box. It belonged to a 3,000-year-old medicinal herb. If you can easily take that out, then it is likely you can bring out a 5,000-year-old medicine herb." Han Li was left speechless. He heard Buddhist sects, Grand techniques were able to strengthen a cultivator's five senses. Legend mentioned myriad distant sight, flawless hearing, penetrative sights like his bright sight spirit eyes. From what he said, his abilities must have reached an inconceivable realm mentioned only in rumors. Having realized this, Han Li's expression relaxed and he slowly said, "That is so. Since you've pointed it out, I do have such a medicine herb. Take a look and see if it's suitable." Han Li had no intention of bargaining. He raised his hand and white light flashed. He tossed a narrow wooden box over to him. The old man was surprised. He didn't think that Han Li would truly agree to his condition. He happily took the box and took a quick glance at its interior before covering it back up. "Not bad, a genuine 5,000-year-old spirit herb. I can use it," the old man happily said. Han Li smiled and his hand blurred, putting away the branch. Then he saluted him and silently departed. In front of old cunning foxes, the less said the better. After he left the hall, he took another trip through the market, but with his spirit treasures and countless medicine herbs, there was little that could tempt him. Several hours later, he returned to the huge stone pagoda. When he walked in his squad's seclusion room, Han Li waved his hand, striking at the door with a spell seal. He didn't wish to be disturbed. But Han Li still wasn't at ease. He raised his hand and released several differently colored streaks of light that disappeared into corners of the room. His two hands formed a spell seal, and a white barrier of light appeared on the walls, thoroughly protecting him from view. As a result, Han Li was able to take a seat on the meditation mat and take out the half-foot-long lightning branch. It was only about as thick as a thumb, but its color was exceptionally green. There was also a fine vortex pattern on its surface, but on closer inspection, it looked more like a flame. He hadn't closely inspected the branch while he was in the profound zenith hall. Now, he brushed his finger lightly past every inch and he closed his eyes. Underneath the branch's surface, the wood was brimming with violent lightning. It was inconceivable for such a thing to have solid form. As he mulled over this, he opened his eyes once more and azure light flashed from his hand. He injected some spiritual power into the branch. The branch trembled and the magic power came back to him, completely repelled. A trace of astonishment appeared in his eye, and he poured in magic power with more force. The branch trembled and a layer of white light appeared on it. It clashed with the azure light from Han Li's hand, appearing entirely incompatible. A while later, a slight drone sounded from the light. Han Li frowned and he waved his hand, vanishing the azure light. It was clear that forcefully injecting more spiritual power into the branch would cause it to explode. With Han Li's experience, he had other ways of examining it. He grabbed the branch and released several arcs of golden lightning onto it. The lightning jumped on the branch's markings and remained completely still. Han Li didn't appear dejected. If this branch was easily researched, its previous master wouldn't have sold it at such a low price. Han Li then tossed it into the air, where it immediately floated in suspension. He flicked his finger at the branch, and a golden swordlight flew out and chopped at the center of the branch. A deep clap of thunder sounded. White light arced out and the branch was easily split into two. It then gently fell to the ground. Han Li then reached out for the two halves and took them into his hand. Han Li swept his gaze past them and saw silver light shining from the split ends. Blue light shining from his eyes, he closely looked at it and discovered that the so-called silver light was actually countless thin arcs of lightning waved together in some sort of pattern. It formed an inconceivable design. It was meticulous and complex. If it weren't for his spirit eyes, he wouldn't have been able to see through it. In the blink of an eye, a layer of green would immediately formed over the cut ends, creating two independent branches. Han Li was truly shocked by this. Controlling lightning and condensing it together was originally something he considered a skill of his, but lightning of this elaborate detail was beyond his abilities and something he never considered. This was countless times more complex than his nets or condensed balls of divine devilbane lightning, and those methods already required an outstanding degree of control with his spiritual sense. Han Li took the branches in hand and lowered his head in thought. Suddenly, his gaze flickered, and he flicked his finger at one of the branches. Golden light flashed, and it was again cut into two. This time, Han Li was prepared and his spiritual sense stirred. He looked at the bared silver opening. Blue light brightly shined from his eyes, and he completely focused on the branch's opening. This time, however, the designs of the lightning from the opening was vastly different. A short moment later, The opening was covered again by green wood. He slowly closed his eyes and began to think about what he saw. Suddenly, his finger flicked, and another piece of the wood was split open. Again, a completely different pattern was revealed, and he looked at it with complete focus. Soon, the branch half was cut into countless small pieces, all lying on the ground. As Han Li began to show a face of understanding, he spat out a thin sword light and cut through the center of the other branch half. In a flash of silver light, it split into 2 even pieces. He closely examined it once more, and he released countless more golden streaks, splitting the wood into thin pieces. The thinnest pieces were like paper. Even so, the lightning wood remained extremely stable. It clearly contained a fearsome amount of lightning to not burst out. Letter 1D5F3, letter 1D69B, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D556, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D6AC, letter 1D698, letter 1D46. Han Li suddenly flipped his hand and took out a white jade slip. He held onto the jade slip and began to imprint all the patterns that he saw. Finally, he let out a long breath. Even with his astonishing level of memory, the many meticulous and complex patterns would be difficult to remember. With that freed up from his mind, he began to comprehend the lightning designs. For some reason, why he saw the lightning patterns, he felt a grasp of it, knowing the patterns had to do with the formation of the lightning wood. He sat down for an entire day, unmoving as he completely looked at the patterns. Suddenly, Han Li's eye stirred and he flicked his finger. Lightning rang. A streak of golden lightning shot out and immediately burst, scattering into countless thin arcs. He chanted an incantation as fingers began to flick through the air. The arcs of lightning stopped and suddenly condensed together. They began to weave into a strange design, faintly resembling what Han Li saw from the branch. Just as it was about to take the form of cloth, it ruptured. The weaved lightning disappeared like a firecracker. Han Li let out a deep sigh, and he couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment, but excitement was still strong in his eyes. His thoughts were correct. The golden lightning cloth he weaved with the lightning patterns possessed a vague power. It was a shame that he made an error in weaving the cloth, leading to its eruption before he could research it. Han Li took a deep breath and he twisted his hands together. A dense bolt of golden lightning shot out, letting out a rumbling sound. It burst into countless thin arcs of lightning and condensed together again. The threads now appeared in far greater number.